Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the late start this evening. Appreciate all of you being here. It's great to see this many people interested in their city government and what's going on. So thank you for this. If you'll all please rise. Cynthia Washington will lead us in an invocation, and then our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Thomas Peckhall and the Junior Fire Cadets. Ms. Washington.
Let's pause for a moment in silence for our bereaved of school shooting and also for the war situation and for the Gates family. Please pause for a moment, please. Let us pray. Oh, most gracious Holy Father, come before you with our down here. Father, I just want to thank you for this day, Father. Thank you for all that has gone on, Father, whether it is good or bad. Father, please continue to guide our city leaders, our staff, in reference to our community temple and we children to live in, Father. Father, continue to watch over the bereaved, the incarcerated, Father, and for a special blessing, Lord Jesus, also the nursing home patients right now, Father, please bless, Lord Jesus. Bless all that's assembled here, Father. Before I do this prayer, Father, please forgive me for anything I might have said or done that's not within your will today, Father. We want you to get the glory out of everything that's done here today, Father God. We ask you to bless in your darling Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Why don't you guys just stay up here if you would, Council. We'll go ahead and move you right up. We have a proclamation we would like to present, and our Mayor Pro Tem is going to present that proclamation tonight, and then I guess you all would like to ask us some questions, as I understand. Yes? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
For the office of the mayor of the city of Temple. George, you come up here a little closer, come up here, this far. Whereas the city of Temple is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally. The homes are the locations where people are the greatest risk of fire. Whereas the nonprofit National Fire Protection Association has demonstrated through its research that cooking is the leading cause of home fires. 1 out of 3 home fires begins in the kitchen, more than any other place in the home. Whereas the first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. Residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire. Whereas using proper care when cooking will have a positive effect on the home fire problem. Each cooking fire that is prevented in Temple is an opportunity to prevent painful injury and costly property damage. And whereas the 2006 Fire Safety Week theme, which is Prevent Cooking Fires, Watch What You Heat, effectively serves to remind all of us of the simple actions we can take to stay safer from fires during Fire Safety Week and the year round. Now, by the hand of the mayor, Bill Jones, he does proclaim the week of October the 8th through the 14th, 2006 as Fire Safety Week in the city of Temple, Texas, and I encourage all citizens to heed the important safety measures of this special week and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Temple Fire and Rescue and Emergency Services. In the testimony of the hand of the mayor of the city of Temple, Bill Jones. And I want to say congratulations, and don't cook if you don't watch what you're cooking, okay? All right, come to introduce yourselves. Come over here.
Here we go.
Right here. Speak up.
I think I turned it on. Did I not? Sorry.
I'm Tyler Lindsay, and this question is for
Hey, why don't we introduce everyone and then they can ask the question.
My name is George Fig.
George.
My
My name is Marissa Sinclair.
My name is Aaron Vasquez.
Okay.
This question is for Mayor Jones. The leading cause of fire in the kitchen is A, burnt toast, B, unattended cooking, C, oven fires, D, microwave oven fires.
I think I know the answer to this question. Okay. Do I get a lifeline? Can I?
You may call the audience if you wish.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think it's unattended cooking. B.
That is correct.
It is, okay.
This question is for Councilmember Schneider.
Okay, go over there and see.
Give me an easy one now. I'm an Aggie.
If you leave the kitchen for even a short period of time while you are frying, grilling, or boiling food, you should A, turn off stove down low, B, leave your food cooking as it is, C, turn off stove, D, cover food with aluminum foil.
Well, I don't cook a whole lot, but I'm going to guess C.
That's correct.
Turn off the stove.
This is Council Member Luna. If a small grease fire starts in a pan, A, use baking powder to put the fire out. B, smother the flames by carefully sliding the lid over the pan. Make sure you are wearing a oven mitt. Turn off the burner. C, pour water on the fire. D, move the pan to the sink and run the water over it.
I've tried pouring water on it in the past, and that didn't work out well. I would smother the flames by carefully sliding a lid over the pot, turn the burner off.
Correct.
My question for Councilmember Jeter. If you have a fire in your microwave, A, turn it off immediately and open the door. B, turn it off immediately and keep the door closed. C, open the door and attempt to put out the fire. D, get a lid from a pot or pan to cover the fire.
B, keep the door closed.
That's correct.
And my question is for Councilmember Tyrod. Keep kids away from cooking areas by enforcing a kid-free zone of A, 3 feet around the stove, B, 1 foot around the stove, C, 2 feet around the stove, or D, 1 foot to the right or left of the stove.
Well, since my children try to keep me away from the stove, the answer's 3 feet.
That is correct.
Thank you. There you go, guys.
Thanks to all of you. These are junior fire cadets, and they've gone through the fire cadet program during the summertime. And you guys look like the age that you'll get the opportunity to do this a couple more times, maybe. I think that's right. Isn't
We
it?
certainly hope so.
Yeah, we do too.
We certainly hope so.
It's a great program. Thomas, thanks for all you do for our kids and
Thank you.
helping to educate them and educate our community.
And thank you for the proclamation. We know that in the fire service that fire doesn't discriminate, doesn't matter the color of your skin or how much money you have in the wallet. Fire plays no favorites. And so it's important that we all practice fire safety, not only during the month of October, but it has to be an everyday event. And we thank you for your support of that.
Great. Thomas, thanks for all you do. See, we get to have a little fun at City Council. So, great to have the kids here. Okay. We have 3 more proclamations here to do today, and 2 proclamations and a recognition. And our first proclamation is for German American Day. And if Doris Riegel and members of the Texas German Society, if you would come forward and let us present this proclamation. I think we got to do this last year as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, nice to see you again this one.
Don't mean to correct you, Mayor Jones, but my last name is pronounced Rigel.
Rigel?
Because
Sorry.
I use the German pronunciation.
Okay.
That's why.
Oh, no, sorry about that.
okay.
You want to tell us a little bit about your society?
Well, and I brought with me 2 members, Harold and Ruby Flunky. Also, again, very much a German last name, and you can tell one of the reasons why I'm very happy to do this proclamation is that we really do treasure our German heritage and our background. And I was very happy to have you with us last year at our meeting. This year, I thought the timing of it would be nice to join you here at the City Council chambers. Our hopes was that we'd like to bring an awareness about here in the Temple community that on October 6th is the German American Day. And so far, we haven't really been able to do too many events. But I know there's got to be many more members. I see even right here in council member names that a lot look very much like a German background. So we're hoping to just bring about an awareness and have people join us our meeting, which is once a month at Temple College on the 4th Monday of the month at 7 p.m.
We are very blessed in Temple and our surrounding areas to have many cultures and many heritages that have played an important part in the growth of this region. And we are pleased that you continue to recognize your heritage. And Ms. Rigel, let me offer this proclamation tonight in recognition of German American Day. Whereas the Congress and House of Representatives of the United States of America have passed into law joint resolutions designating October 6th as German American Day. Whereas Americans of German descent constitute the largest ethnic group in the United States of America, with more than 58 million Americans proudly proclaiming the German heritage. Whereas German Americans have since the arrival of the first German immigrants in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on October 6th of 1683, distinguished themselves by their loyalty and their contributions to the culture and life of the United States of America, and have supported its democratic principles and have dedicated themselves to the promotion of freedom for all people everywhere. And whereas German Americans are deserving of being honored by an annual German American Day, now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim October 6th of 2006 as German American Day in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all citizens to recognize the vast contributions of German Americans in the United States and in all fields of human endeavor, and to thoughtfully observe this special day with appropriate recognition. And in testimony whereof I witness my hand in the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this 5th day of October of 2006. We appreciate you very much. Thank you for requesting this. Thank you. It's nice to meet both of you. Thanks for coming. Our next recognition and proclamation is to members of the Temple chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. Ms. Washington, if you would come forward and your group. I have a rather lengthy proclamation here for you tonight, Ms. Washington. Thank you for offering that invocation for us this evening as well. Thank you very much. Let me offer this, and then you can tell us. I think Mr. Graff has. She has signed up to speak, but I'll let her make her comments at this point if you would like, and as well as anything that you'd have to say to us this evening. Anybody else? Mr. Graff's up. Thanks. Whereas the National Federation for the Blind, the NFB, was founded in 1940 to end discrimination against the blind and to secure first-class citizenship for all blind persons. Today, the Federation, representing more than 50,000 members across the country, continues to work to secure equal rights and opportunities for the blind. Whereas the NFB works to change attitudes about blindness by providing information to parents, teachers, school administrators, business, political, social, and civic leaders. Since blind people and blindness are still frequently misunderstood, the NFB has developed a public education campaign, Meet the Blind Month, to create opportunities for people to learn firsthand that blind people are basically like everyone else and lead full and active lives. Whereas we also desire to recognize White Cane Safety Day, which is October 15th, because the white cane in our society has become one of the symbols of a blind person's ability to come and go on his own, and it has promoted courtesy and special consideration to those individuals on our streets and highways. Whereas the white cane is a symbol of dignity and determination, and it is a tangible reminder that those individuals who have impaired eyesight possess not only the desire, but also the ability to lead independent, full, and productive lives. Whereas the observance of Meet the Blind Month and White Cane Safety Day renews our commitment to eliminate physical and attitudinal barriers that continue to hinder the full participation of blind persons in our society. And now, therefore, I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of October in 2006 as Meet the Blind Month, and October 15th of 2006 as White Cane Safety Day in the City of Temple, Texas. I urge each and every citizen to accept the invitation to meet members of the NFB, the voice of the nation's blind, and become more aware of the meaning of the white cane and all it symbolizes. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this 5th day of October of 2006. And I'll bring this down to you in just a moment, but in the meantime, if you would like to tell us a little bit about some of the activities that you have going on in this month, Ms. Washington, or some of the things that we need to be aware of.
Okay, Mayor Jones and staff and all present here, we thank the City of Temple for this proclamation and observing the White Cane Safety Day. This long white cane is very important in the City of Temple. A lot of people driving around, they don't realize this, and they about run us over. Also, you see the guide dog here. It's very important that you pay attention to the guide dog and the long white cane. We have several events this month. If you'll pay special attention, Dee Dee DeGraff is going to give an announcement where we're going to co-host her event here. I won't go into that right now, but we'll be going into the schools in reference to give presentation on blindness, the braille, the guide dog, the long white cane, anything pertaining to blindness. We have electronic devices also. If you or your group would like us to come and make a presentation, you may call us. Our numbers are available at the city secretary here. First of all, I forgot to bring you greetings from our national affiliate, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Mark Murray is our president. We have 50 states covered here. Also, we have some international people that come to our group here as far as the blind. We also have a Texas affiliate. If you're in Austin, Texas, stop by 327 East Highland Mall, suite number 257. This is the first time that Texas has ever had a National Federation of the Blind affiliate office. We also are here locally. Ms. Mira and Claudette, anyone can tell you how to reach into us here at the Temple chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. I have with me today, standing here, Dee Dee DeGraff. I think several of our members didn't get up today, but David Buck is one of our 2006 scholarship winners. So when we're out asking you to buy a raffle ticket or to support a cause, just for a worthy cause, of course, David is one of our 2006. We have 4 winners. We also have a national scholarship, whereas we give 30 scholarships ranging in amount from $2,500 to $15,000 per year. And we don't have enough students actually to access these scholarship funds. David's going to give you a little bit more information about NFB and what we do actually here. We'll keep it as brief as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Members, Mayor. He pretty much summed up a lot of what I had to say. There are some things that NFB does do that we want you to be aware of. Blind education, blind awareness for our community, such as the program Cynthia mentioned. There is a blind, a job line that is available for the blind or anybody else. It's funded through
Department of Education.
Department of Education. There is a news line that allows anyone who's visually impaired to access newspapers, sections, articles, all by use of a touch-tone phone. There's all free services for the blind. And as well as Cynthia mentioned, the educational scholarship services that the NFB is providing. Thank you for your time and appreciate your support.
Thank you. And Ms. Washington, Councilmember Jeter's bringing the proclamation. He's right behind you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Graff, it's just on. Just step forward, just a little bit more. There you go.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and City Council, and everyone Craft, but everyone knows me as Dee Dee. And not only am I a member of the NFB, but I also chair a support group called the VIPs, which stands for Visually Impaired Persons, who are very important people. And every year we put on an event called Come Walk in My Shoes. And this is our 9th annual year to do this event. And it will be held October 14th, next Saturday, at the Temple Public Library in the McLean's Room from 1 to 4. Public is invited. I would like to personally invite each and every one of you and everyone here to please bring your family and friends. What we do is we will blindfold you, or you can wear simulated glasses to see what it's like to have what I have, retinitis pigmentosa, cataracts, glaucoma, or diabetes, to see what it is like to walk in our shoes. What we do is some of the challenges we issue is eating, drinking, counting money, mobility. You will actually get to work a guide dog to see what it's like to work a dog. You learn the techniques of the cane and sighted guides. We teach you Braille, and you will get to see the technology that's out there for the blind. David, can you pass these? Can you pass these out? And I have flyers for everyone is invited to come. It's all free of charge, and we have door prizes. Okay, these are the flyers. These are the invitations.
Okay.
And we would love to see each and every one of you there. And I personally love to thank the mayor. He has done 2 years in a row and has taken our challenges and has done very well with them. So I hope to see each and every one there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Thanks to all of you, and I encourage any and all of you to attend next Saturday, the 14th, not this coming Saturday, but the 14th. It is a very interesting challenge to participate and see the types of technology, the devices, the games, the techniques that visually impaired people will use to just give them as high a quality of life as they care to have. And it's very interesting to walk in their shoes for that little bit, and we can't even comprehend what it is that you do every day. But thank you for letting us be a part of that each and every year. Thanks, Dee Dee. Passed out here. Okay, we have one last recognition that we would like to make this evening before we get into our normal agenda. Would Ms. Mabel Fletcher come forward, and Laura Van Skyver from Keep Temple Beautiful. Do we have other board members here tonight, Laura, that are here for KTB? Zoe's here? Okay. Oh, staff photographer, Zoe Raska. This fine. Mabel, nice to see you again. Thank you. Laura Van Skyver, as many of you know, is the executive director of the Keep Temple Beautiful organization, an organization in our city of which many of us are involved, and they're doing great work. But we have been blessed with this lady in front of us, and who is a volunteer in our organization. And we would like to take this opportunity tonight to recognize her for the great work that she has done for our community through Keep Temple Beautiful. And Mabel, let me offer this proclamation to you in recognition of your service tonight. Whereas the City of Temple is greatly honored to join with Keep Temple Beautiful on this special occasion of recognizing Mabel Fletcher for outstanding dedication and service as a volunteer. Whereas Mabel Fletcher has faithfully volunteered at Keep Temple Beautiful for a year and a half, and in that time has put in approximately 1,560 hours. And we desire to commend her for her outstanding volunteer service, for which she willingly gives of her time and talent. Whereas Mabel is an inspiration to all those who know her, and she is well known for helping and encouraging others. During her time with Keep Temple Beautiful, she has learned to type, use Microsoft Office, and assisted with many administrative tasks. And whereas it is our desire of all the citizens in Temple to recognize Mabel Fletcher on this very special occasion and to express our sincere appreciation to this fine lady for her dedication to volunteer service. Now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, with great pride do hereby recognize Mabel Fletcher, and I urge each and every citizen to join with Keep Temple Beautiful in expressing sincere appreciation to this fine lady for her outstanding dedication to volunteer service. In testimony whereof I witness my hand in the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, and proudly present this proclamation to Mabel Fletcher on this 5th day of October of 2006. Thank you very much. Laura, thank you for recognizing Mabel. And I think Councilmember Jeter, if I'm not mistaken, had something to do with this. So thank you, Tony, for bringing this forward. All right. We're at the public comments portion of our agenda this evening. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and no discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. A number of you have signed up to speak on the smoking ordinance. This is a little unusual this evening. It's a second reading of an ordinance. Normally, with the second reading, it's pretty well handled in a routine manner, but we posted this for a public hearing tonight. So you're certainly welcome to come up at this point and speak on the public hearing. I'll read your name off, and you may come forward. If you would rather wait till the public hearing portion of the meeting to make your comments, at that point we can have some interaction if there's a further question that we would like to ask of you, or we can dialogue about it a little bit more than we can in this particular section. So, but I'll certainly give you the flexibility if your schedule is such that you need to leave after making your comments. You're certainly welcome to come forward now. So I'll run through those first on the smoking. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to run through those that are not here on the smoking ordinance first of all, though. First, Miss Betty Elliott. Good evening, Miss Elliott. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Well, I'm here regarding this, the garbage, brush, and bulk collection. Several days before the law went into effect, a friend of mine in the southern part of town put something out about 3 or 4 days ahead of time. She had a note on her door that says, move this back to your backyard until Monday or Tuesday, the day of pickup. That we will not put them out before the day that is to be picked up. Okay. She has no one to help her, is elderly, she sleeps late, she does not either have to, does she either have to set her alarm or to call, or stay up all night, or call somebody to come and help her to put it out? My street, within 3 blocks, there have been things at the curb for almost 3 weeks. Why? Good question. Also, have you given any consideration to the storms, old trees that split, etc.? Once the tree is down, no one has a place to put it. Some of us on Social Security cannot hire tree trimmers, so we rely on friends and family. I've drug many brush piles and stacked them up. I don't think I'm able to do that anymore. I could do it again, I guess, a little bit, maybe a couple, 2 or 3 little tiny limbs at a time. But if you have a whole tree down, that is something else. And from the backyard to the front yard, if you have a tree down in the backyard, you have to leave it there until it's brush time, and then drag it to the front yard. That's moving it twice. Or else you have to pay. Rules are made to be broken or amended. Please think of us senior citizens on Social Security. Make amendments so that you can help us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Next, Mr. Likes, your item is a public hearing as well tonight. Would you like to speak during the public hearing? Yours is strictly a zoning issue, and so it does not have a public hearing with that? Yeah, it does. It's a first reading and a public hearing on a rezoning, so if you'd like, you can come up and speak at that time, but you're welcome to come up and speak at this point. Okay, great. Mr. Capps, you have a couple comments that you'd like to make. One's on the smoking, but you had something else you wanted to talk about as well. So.
I reserve the smoking to the
Okay, great, sir.
There's one thing, problem's going to be coming up very shortly. That's at the intersection of P Ridge.
You need to give your name and address.
Willie Capps, 6817 Old Waco Lane, Temple.
Thank you, sir.
On the intersection of P Ridge and 2305, there's a major problem right now. There's a school there, Joe Pirtle, and it's a nightmare to get off of 2305 and onto 2305 during the morning hours because of the traffic coming into town to go to work. Belton has broken ground on a new school on P Ridge on the north side, a quarter mile from that same intersection. You need to think very seriously of getting a light in there before school starts next year, because that's when it's going to open another 800 students. It should be a light at Old Waco Lane, or Waco Road, and 2305 also. That's where my street is. But a traffic light at P Ridge will ease that traffic on Old Waco Road. Need to think about that real quick. Another thing is, on the highway here, John Bruce Drive, there's a lot of construction going on there. There's some businesses that are going away, some new ones coming up. And I would like to see this highway renamed simply I-35 North and I-35 South. Point being, the general who the highway is named of is not a very nice man, or was not a very nice man. He's credited with acquiring the land for Camp Hood, now Fort Hood. His methods were less than honorable. Back in the 30s, as the older people may know, this was a depression, and a lot of people were in hard times. And they readily grabbed what pittance the government asked them and moved to towns and give up the land for Camp Hood. Where there are those that had lots of land, been in the family for hundreds of years, that did not need to be moved off. They were living fine just through the Great Depression. To move these people off their land, General Bruce, used barns, outhouses, for cannon practice, for bazooka practice, for rifle practice. He used the livestock, the horses, the cows, the pigs, the chickens, for rifle practice for soldiers. It was not uncommon to have a knock on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning, and when you answered that door with your measly little shotgun in your hand, you were met by the barrel of a cannon and told to leave within 15 minutes because your house was coming down. Many of these people were never paid for their land at Fort Hood. Never paid, or paid nothing for what it was worth. And it's a shame to have this highway named after a man who was so despicable. He ran people off their land, didn't pay them for it, and threatened their lives and bodies. One woman's husband, a veteran, was in the Kerrville VA hospital dying from tuberculosis when she was forced off her land. That land entails all of North Fort Hood, where the National Guard now meets, including the family cemetery. She had no place to go because her family had already been run off their land. They had to move to town, and they were never paid for this land. I think it's a disgrace. Many people left that area and moved to Temple, they moved to Killeen, Coppers Cove, Gatesville, Waco. I think it's a shame to have this road named after such a man who was so mean to so many people. And changing the name to I-35 North and South would be a good idea right now because a lot of people moving in, moving out. I think that's something that should be definitely considered. And I'd like to take a short time to recognize 3 future Eagle Scouts sitting over there, Troop 153.
Thank you, Mr. Capps. Ms. Lindeman, did you want to wait till the public hearing? Okay, thank you. Ms. Dykes? Dr. Smith? And Bill Smith, you're on garbage pickup, so if you want to...
I'm talking trash.
All right, you want to talk trash? Go on forward, let's talk trash.
I also just came here because this is my first time. I'm running for public office. I'm running for state representative. But my reason I came here tonight is I want to see how the city council operates. I was invited to come in, and I like the way what I've seen so far. What I've heard about it is great. I also
State
kind
your
of,
name and address for the
I'm
record,
sorry,
please, sir.
Bill Smith, 4202 Antelope Trail, Temple, Texas.
Thank you, sir.
Protocol. And I just want to say to, my reasons or concerns, I've talked to a lot of senior citizens about the garbage collection and bulk issues that are coming about. And they told me one of the biggest concerns, as this lady just mentioned earlier, was what do we do if we have to move it ourselves? We're old, we can't afford to have it done. And some of them have the treatmen come down and cut their yards, they leave them out front. If they're not picked up in a certain time, they're afraid they're going to get charged for these kind of things. I think some kind of concession should be taken into consideration for senior citizens, or some people can't move it themselves. Otherwise, I can see able-bodied people doing it and following the law. But I wasn't real clear on the cost and all that when I got that information in the mail as well. And it was confusing to me, so I'm sure some other people had some issues about it, but I wanted to address that because I think we really have to take care of our senior citizens and not have them have undue fees and stuff in the city because of things being left out there. Because as she said, I've had things in my front yard. I've had to call the city, call your office personally to get things removed from my city block that have been there 2 and 3 weeks. So, I mean, they have to have something done about that. But that was one of my major concerns. I hope we can do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And Dr. Aylor, did you want to wait till the public hearing, or do you need to make your comments? No, sure, that'd be just fine, sir.
Mayor Jones, members of the City Council, thank you. My name is Ard Naylor, 4802 South 31st. I'm a family medicine resident at Scott and White. I was here back in December at the start of the smoking referendum, and unfortunately I have a meeting to get back to at the hospital. But what I want to do is just briefly thank you very much for all your help on behalf of my patients personally and me personally, and I really think on behalf of everybody at Scott and White. We really appreciate all that you do for the city, and more especially everything you've done for the smoking referendum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate you taking the time tonight, sir. And Ms. Matkin, do you want to wait? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sheffield, wait. I think that got everyone that had signed up to speak. That's not covered by the public hearings. Next item is to receive a report. The next report is from Mr. Rodney Bell. He's the director of the Texas Business Incubator, and he's here to give us his annual report. Rodney, good to see you. Good to see you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City staff, and most especially the citizens of Temple. First of all, I'd like to kind of lay out what the incubator does. There may be some people here that aren't aware. The incubator is here to assist small, early development and early startup businesses in planning their businesses. We offer the services and resources by counseling with future business owners to help them in performing and assessing the viability of their business. The incubator is a collaboration, obviously, of the City of Temple, Temple College Foundation, Temple Economic Development Corp., and the Temple Chamber of Commerce. Each sponsor has contributed money to support, promote the business, and accelerate local economy in Temple. I want to thank the City Council for all the previous funding that you've given to the incubator to make it become a reality. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, the Advisory Board, and most importantly, the clients that are currently in the incubator, we thank you for your support. I'd like to introduce our Board of Directors. Some are here and some are not. Ken Higdon and Danette Toon are not available to be here. However, I know Rosemary Hauser is here. Would you stand? Jonathan Graham represents the city, and Mr. John Clary from the Temple Economic Development Corp. I want to thank them for their service as the Board of Directors. I'd also like to introduce our advisory board members, Charlotte Stallworth, Judy Morales, Dr. Harry Macy, Vic Gillette, and Richard Hirschler. Each of these are very involved in helping us with some of the little behind-the-scenes things that we do at the incubator. Since we opened our doors in September of 2005, we've seen Integrico Composites start their new business, and they have since moved to the industrial park. In addition, we have a current client list that includes Family Home Care Services, which is owned by Ethel Flowers. They moved into the incubator in March of 2006. Thorpe & Company is owned by Lynette Corp. She does court reporting. She moved in April of 2006. In June, we had 3 clients move in. We had Trust Cleaning, which is owned by Nathan Dotson. Intuit Intelligent Marketing, owned by Cindy Chadwick in June of 2006. Mr. C's Gourmet Syrups, owned by Lou Nichols, moved in June of 2006. And Photography by Oliver, which is owned by Harold Lewis, moved in July of 2006. And I think I have some of my clients here. Cindy and Lou are here. I want to thank them for coming. They're very active in our incubator. Each of the clients were required to complete a business plan and financial models and were considered by our board and approved through our board. We currently have 10 of the 11 available offices rented in the incubator. In addition, we are speaking and working with another company to rent the last office. And since then, since the Texas Bioscience Institute will be moving out to the Scott and White West campus in the future, we will have available some offices that are now on the 3rd floor. The main purpose of the incubator is to grow businesses, and we have a significant number of individuals come in and receive counseling from the incubator, but will not ever move in because their businesses aren't something that would fit into the incubator. We've counseled with bakeries, all kinds of different businesses that we're just not going to be able to fit into the incubator, but we still counsel with them because they still need the services and the counseling to start their business. By creating a business environment, we can help assist these businesses with maturing and developing their business to become an integral part of the economy in the city of Temple. The businesses will graduate, they'll help increase the tax base, and they'll also create jobs for the city of Temple. I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be such an integral part of the community and for your support that you've given us. And I'll entertain any questions that you might have for me.
Thank you for that report, Rodney. Counsel?
Mr. Bell, I just want to say in the mid-90s when Aaron Leibowitz and Jerry Seacrest were doing Leadership Temple, they thought this idea, and I have to tell you at the time, their fellow classmates at Leadership Temple thought they were from outer space. I want to say it works, but also I appreciate you and your enthusiasm because it is working.
I appreciate your support.
Other council members, questions, comments? Well, I'd just like to say it is a great community partnership. There are several organizations, as you have mentioned, supporting this financially. We've received a tremendous amount of support from the federal government and the grant that we received to help renovate the facility. And it's a great facility. It's a great community asset for us. So, Rodney, thank you for your leadership. Thanks to the board and the advisory board for your work in the community to help make this a reality. And congratulations to the businesses who are there, and we wish you the best. So.
Thank you, and I have brochures that I will place and table on the back. And if anybody in the room would like to have those, they can get those as they're leaving tonight.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to receive a report from Mayor William Jones III regarding the Texas High-Speed Rail and Transportation Corporation and a trip to France that I took in July. I'll go through this fairly rapidly. I just returned from a trip to Washington, D.C., in which I gave probably no less than a dozen briefings to different House staff members and different federal agencies. We visited the FAA, the Amtrak, the Federal Rail Association, and a number of staff members from Congress about our efforts, and many of them are on board and already participate with us. And this is a very, very exciting prospect for the state of Texas in general, but it can be a significant event and an opportunity for our community. You'll see here in just a little while why that would be the case. On the screen in front of you, you'll see the 11 designated routes for high-speed rail across the country. This was designated in October of 2000. You see Texas is covered by a route that goes from Oklahoma and Little Rock, Arkansas, down in through Dallas and down through the center of our state. There's another route that begins in Houston, Texas, and that's called the Gulf Coast route, and that goes to the east. There's a significant problem there, and that's the disconnect between Houston and the rest of the population centers of the state of Texas. And so we've been working very hard to try and correct that oversight. And I think next slide, Alan, will show a blue line. It's a close up, and there's a blue line there called the Brazos Express Corridor. That is to link Houston with the South Central line, and it will go through Bryan College Station in Brazos County, thus the name, the Brazos Express Corridor. And it links right about in the middle, and it happens to be at Temple, Texas, and Killeen, and Fort Hood brings all of us into that Brazos Express Corridor. The next slide shows a little, again, a close-up, and what that makes up once you look at the Texas component is something that's been nicknamed the Texas T-bone, because it has that appearance of a T-bone. And if you look at those counties that surround the proposed rail corridor, the yellow line down to the southeast, and then the line that parallels I-35 from Dallas through Austin, San Antonio, then the colored counties, that makes up 70% of the population of the state of Texas today, and would be served by the Texas high-speed rail. And if you recall, back in the 80s and early 90s, there was another high-speed rail proposal. I think if you click through the next couple, it may show it. There you go. That triangle was the original rail proposal back in the late 80s, early 90s, when the TGV proposal was active in the state of Texas. That covered 764 miles, linear miles, to link the three major cities. But as you can see there in the center, Bryan College Station was not a part of that, and it missed a major metropolitan area in the state of Texas. The Texas T-bone corrects that oversight, and it still links all of the major cities with high-speed rail service, and that reduces the mileage required for the rail system to 440 miles. And let me make one point. When we talk high-speed rail, we're talking what's considered in the rail industry ultra-high speed. That's in excess of 200 miles an hour. That's the speeds that many of the trains that are in Europe and overseas. There is not a train like this in the United States today. The TGV in France runs at that speed. The bullet train that you hear about in Japan will run at that speed, and also trains in Germany and in Shanghai, China, do run at those kind of speeds. But at that point, you link Dallas-Fort Worth through the T down into Houston in an hour and a half at the speeds of the high-speed rail that we're talking about. And the next, I think, slide just shows the Trans-Texas Corridor proposal, which is a total of 1,150 miles. But the Trans-Texas Corridor, in its original concept, was meant to kind of bypass the urban areas, because it was also meant to mitigate the non-attainment areas of the large cities. So that's just for comparative purposes. It really serves no other purpose. So next slide, please. Here's the real key. Today, the population of the state is 23 million people. It's projected in the next 35 years by 2040 to be in excess of 50 million people. That's a huge growth in our population. And if you remember those counties that were colored in around the Texas T-bone, which are currently 70% of the state's population, in 2040 it will amount to 78% of the state's population. A lot of people. We're not going to put them on I-35. We've got to figure out a different way to move our people around the state, and high-speed rail is a very viable answer to that problem. You see there some of the makeup of the board for the Texas High-Speed Rail and Transportation Corporation, of which the City of Temple is a member. Killeen is also a member. Other cities, College Station, Texas, Hillsborough, Harris County. Our chairman is County Judge Eccles, Robert Eccles, in Harris County. We also have great support from Dallas County and Maureen Dickey. We have two new members, which we think are very, very significant additions to our organization. If you'll notice right there in the middle, two names, Neen Foxhall and John Carpenter. They represent Continental Airlines and American Airlines. They are both very active members, and I just spent a day and a half with John Carpenter in Washington, D.C., and they are very excited about high-speed rail in Texas, and you wonder why they would be interested. we propose that the new model for high-speed rail and rail in general doesn't go to downtown areas as rail has in the past, and it's a Grand Central Station or a Central Union Station type environment. The current proposal has the high-speed rail going into the airports, and it's a feeder for the airports. So at that point, it helps. Long-term, we met with the Deputy Administrator of the FAA yesterday, and she was very excited about this opportunity. They're looking at issues relating to airport capacity over the next 30 to 40 years, and how do they, how can an airport be big enough? And it can't be. They are looking for other alternatives. And so they see this as a tremendous way to feed the masses of people that are going to be here in Texas and in other parts of the United States with the other rail corridors into the airports, serving more people and causing less air operations at the airports via commuter services and the like. So that's the reason that American Airlines and Continental would be interested in this proposal. And you see down there at the bottom that Scott and White also sees this as a tremendous opportunity because you know that they serve a large area, and this would be a way to get patients to and from the hospitals and the clinics throughout the state. You'll see this, I think, in a slide in a few minutes, just what it does link. We have tremendous bipartisan support in Congress. You see both of our senators, Kay Bailey Hutchison and John Cornyn, up at the top, and many delegates from across the state of Texas that are very active supporters. You see Chet Edwards there, John Carter in that second row, Kevin Brady from Houston, Pete Sessions down in the lower section, and Eddie Bernice Johnson and Sheila Jackson Lee. So from across the state of Texas, much of the delegation is in support of this effort. And the next one shows a growing support from our Texas legislators. The gentleman at the top left is Senator John Corona, who's chairman of the Transportation Committee for the House, or for the Senate, I'm sorry, for the Texas legislature. Very active and enthusiastic supporter. The next slide starts to show what the linkages are with the Texas high-speed rail. And there it just shows the airports that are linked via the high-speed rail, and then down there at the bottom is the Port of Houston, also a very active member in the High-Speed Rail Authority. Sees tremendous potential, and we'd probably look to develop freight rail on the high-speed rails as well, and which would be very important. Fort Hood is excited about the prospects of having this type of rail line going down to the ports for deployment of both equipment and manpower. Because they deploy out of the Port of Houston and the ports of Beaumont. 750,000 students could be linked by high-speed rail. You see all of the universities, major universities and colleges across the state of Texas that could be linked, that are in the major cities and along the route of the high-speed rail. And I've already spoken of Fort Hood and its significance, and then the other defense components across the state of Texas that are linked by the proposed high-speed rail route. And we've got research being done. The George Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University is doing research for us, public policy research. Texas Tech Transportation Institute plays a significant role in logistics planning and technology issues for all different types of transportation in Texas, and they're playing a role with us in high-speed rail. And then the Jordan Leland School of Public Policy at Texas Southern, they're doing different types of economic analysis for us as well. So we've got universities and graduate students doing work for us. We talked about the medical access that could be connected via the Brazos Express Corridor and the high-speed rail, Texas T-Bone, and you can see there major hospitals from all over the state that can be linked, and we don't even show, call out the medical school, which we know the significance of the Texas A&M School of Medicine from Bryan College Station and, of course, in Temple. So tremendous opportunity with our veterans hospitals and the major hospitals in Texas. Where do you go when you get off the high-speed rail? If you're going to the airport, or if you're flying into one of the airports, then you've got a lot of different options, and they're growing every single day. We've got the DART in Dallas, the Texas Regional Express out of Fort Worth, the T, which is a Fort Worth light rail the metro in Houston. All of those are growing every day. The ridership projection in Houston that was projected for 20 years from now is being seen on a daily basis in the city of Houston. So many naysayers about rail service say Texans will never give up their cars and their pickup trucks and their freedom that they want to see on the highway. And that's probably true until given an alternative. And they're seeing that alternative in the larger metropolitan areas today. And they, in fact, are riding the rails more and more to get to work and get to the airports. And the growth is really quite tremendous. This slide shows some of the countries that already have high-speed rail service and the passengers per day that are using those rails. France probably is a very good comparison for us from a population perspective. France is a little in excess of 60,000 people today, and essentially it's a little smaller than the state of Texas. It has extensive rail service in France. It's got about 5,000 miles of rail. 1,500 miles of that are true high-speed rail. And so that's probably, from a perspective of an analysis on the high-speed rail component, it's a good comparison. It is profitable operationally in France today. And as we heard from many briefings on my trip there, I'll talk about that briefly after we get finished here. There's some size comparisons to the countries that already have high-speed rail. France, you see there next to Texas, Germany next to Montana, Spain is kind of double the size of Oregon, and Japan, of course, and California are often compared. It certainly makes sense geographically and from a population perspective for us to be considering that in this country as an alternative method of transportation. There just shows the TGV system in France. I'll take the opportunity to talk a little bit about what does high-speed rail mean and what would it look like. It would not run on the current freight rail tracks. Many of you might think that, well, we've got Amtrak and it is inefficient. It is as it is today. But if you ever had anybody that came to Temple on the Amtrak or leaves Temple and they say, well, it could be an hour or 2 hours late sometimes, it's because it competes with the freight rail. And every day the Amtrak runs on the same lines as the Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. They own those rail lines. They control when Amtrak can travel and when it cannot. And that has a tremendous impact on the reliability of the Amtrak service. This would be total standalone tracks. It would be special beds for the high speed. It would be parallel tracks, a two-track system, totally isolated, no grade crossings. You wouldn't be a place where you could cross it in a vehicle. You can't have access to it. It would be completely fenced and barricaded the full length of the rail service, and it would be totally electric. And so environmentally, it's much more efficient. The record for the TGV is 350 miles an hour, 520 kilometers per hour. Took a little special modification to the catenary system, that's the electrical system, to be able to operate at that speed. Plus, it's highly inefficient to run at that speed from the electrical usage perspective. So the optimal is around a 200 mile, 220 mile per hour speed, and it also it's just much more economical, and you can cover a lot of ground. Paris to Lyon, France, has run for 25 years now without a single fatality. It's a very, very safe method of travel. And as you see there, my picture with Maureen Dickey there in the lower left, and with Judge Eccles from Harris County and Maureen Dickey. There were a delegation from Texas went to Paris in July. We met with the president of the SNCF International, which is the high-speed rail operator in France. Had briefings from them about the operations, the economics, all aspects of high-speed rail. Explained the infrastructure component, which is a separate French company, and I do say that both of these are state-owned and state-run. It's something that we would not propose here at all, of course. And we had an opportunity to meet with the Ministry of Finance, with the French Trade. She is the French Trade Secretary, and we met with the CEO of the RFF. That's again the operator of the rail itself and the infrastructure. We went to La Rochelle, which is on the coast of France, and toured the plant that manufactures the cars for the TGV. That was a company called Alstom. And we also received briefings on the safety aspects from the Ministry of Finance, Transportation, excuse me, and had the opportunity to ride the train from Paris down to La Rochelle. So, great trip. It's a vision that we have for the state of Texas that I think the time has come. It's an answer to some of the population growth issues that we have in transportation in the state of Texas. So I wanted to, in fact, Mayor Pro Tem asked me to give this briefing, and we had it on the agenda for last council meeting, but given what we had on the schedule, I elected to postpone it till tonight. And we continue to work in this regard, and we just made the trip to Washington, D.C., very well received. City Manager David Blackburn and I have been on the board and worked on this now for about 3 years. And David was on the board when he was city manager of the city of Killeen. So again, Killeen is a member of the high-speed rail. And in as much as we will be at the intersection of the T, when it occurs, it could play a significant role economically for our community by having that intersection here, and just being on the rail route itself can play an important role for us in the future. So I appreciate the opportunity to give this report. Council, any comments or questions you have for me at this point? Hopefully you continue to feel that it's worth our investment in this effort for high-speed rail and for the benefit of the state of Texas. Thank you.
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the ride really so smooth that you couldn't tell you were moving?
No, it was a very smooth ride. It rocked a little bit, and certainly when you pass another train going 200 miles an hour in the other direction, you could certainly feel that. But it was an extremely comfortable ride. Yeah. It was a very comfortable ride. Very, very efficient method of transportation. Very comfortable. So, next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Alan, thank you for putting that up for us. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the Council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and it will be considered separately. This is item 6. We have items A through, looks like, Q tonight, and I would like to ask that item J be removed from the consent agenda. Are there any other items, Council, that you wish to be considered separately? If not, then I'll consider a motion on the consent agenda, items 6A through Q, less item 6J.
Motion to approve? Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item 6J is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an annual purchase agreement for the purchase of aggregate base for fiscal year 0607 with Franklin Minerals of Belton in the estimated amount of $38,800. And Ms. Meske, I've pulled this item. I just have to abstain from this vote, and I've signed the form already declaring my conflict on this. One of my companies bid also on this particular item, so I just have to abstain from the vote. So,
Mayor, I have one question.
would you like a presentation on this?
No, the only question I have, does this meet the new specifications that the Design Standards Board had come up with over the current Type A Grade 2 road base? Meets those standards?
They took no exceptions to our bid.
And those standards were in the bidding documents?
I probably need to verify that those are the correct standards. I did have the street department review them, recommended that we award, didn't see any problem with them. But I'm not sure that they do meet the new recommendations.
I'd like to ask that you check the new standards that we just published this year. Actually went into effect January this year, that they would match that and verify that.
Can absolutely do that.
And with that, if they meet that standard, I would move for approval, if they meet that standard.
Do we have a motion?
So we're tabling or no?
No, he's
If they
motioning conditional upon them meeting the standard, that bid would be acceptable.
Well, there was a motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second on item J. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tomlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Abstain. Item 7 is a third reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a non-exclusive franchise to Central Texas Regional EMS to provide non-emergency ambulance transfer services within the city. Mr. Blackburn.
Mayor and Council, I'll be happy to introduce this item. I think I'm going to tag team with the city attorney, and he's going to go over a little bit of the process and the ordinance, the criteria that you must consider as you consider the franchise. But I'll give you some background on it, and then I'll pass it off to Tim, and then I'll take it back for some final comments. As you may know, in 2002, the city, this is the third reading, of course, but in 2002, the city authorized a franchise agreement with Scott and White Memorial Hospital and King's Daughters Hospital. The term of those franchises was for 5 years, expiring on September 30th of 2007 is when both those were set to expire. Since that time, the franchise with Scott and White continues. However, we've received notice of termination of the King's Daughters franchise, and that service stopped effective May 22nd of this year. On August 2nd of 2006, the city received an application for non-emergency ambulance franchise service from Central Texas Regional EMS. The applicants are Stephen Payne, former operations manager, Scott and White EMS, and David Phillips, former director of pre-hospital services at Scott and White EMS. The applicant has provided all of the documentation that has been requested and required by ordinance. I will say in advance of Mr. Graham's comments that we have reviewed the application and do deem it administratively complete. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Graham and let him kind of walk you through the process as well as the criteria that the franchise ordinance sets forward.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Mr. Graham.
Thank you. As David just said, the applications by ordinance are filed with the Director of Finance. The application must include a statement that the applicant has or will obtain liability insurance, must list the number of vehicles. The applicant will have the year and manufacturer, make, model, and body style of each, names of persons having a direct financial interest or indirect financial interest in the franchise. The applicant may not have been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor involving moral turpitude, and that's things like theft or embezzlement or a crime like that. As David said, the process is following it with the Director of Finance, and then your ordinance calls for a review of the application by the City Manager and Fire Chief. They have done so and have a recommendation for you. Any franchise ordinance requires 3 readings and a public hearing and publication of a written notice in the newspaper. Those things have been done. As David said, the application is, in our opinion, administratively complete. Under your ordinance, you have discretion as to whether to approve a franchise, and the key language in your ordinance is that the City Council must make a finding that granting a franchise or another franchise serves the public convenience, and the burden is on the applicant to establish the public convenience by clear, cogent, and convincing evidence. And I want to read some of the language in here. It says, in determining the public convenience or the public convenience served, the City Council must consider the distance from the permanent address that applicant proposes to use to hospitals and other medical facilities. In other words, from their address within the city or elsewhere, their permanent address, distance to hospitals or other medical facilities, the number of vehicles that the applicant will commit to non-emergency ambulance service, and the number of hours and days each week that the vehicles will be available. If the applicant has a prior experience in ambulance service, whether the applicant has performed satisfactorily. In addition, the council must determine that the facts set out in their application are true and correct, and that the operation proposed by applicant will meet all the requirements of both our law, Chapter 5, Article 3 of the City Code, and all applicable state and federal statutes and regulations. In their application, the applicants have reviewed our code sections and state their willingness to meet those requirements and applicable state and federal statutes and regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. The term of the agreement, is it spelled out in our ordinance, or in the charter or?
Not in the charter. In your ordinance, it states that the term shall be 5 years or not exceed 5 years. And it talks about an expiration date on September 30th.
Mayor, if I can offer just a couple more comments.
In the last year, go ahead.
And I'd like to, Mr. Graham, to clarify that last point also, because that affects some of the comments that I'm going to make here, and that is in reference to the term of the franchise. In discussions that I've had with staff this past weekend since the distribution of the literature or the memorandum from the agenda packet, I believe it's my understanding anyway that the council can consider a term less than 5 years tonight without taking any further action.
And David and I have discussed this. I think per your city code section, I think you can, and per the notice you've advertised as well, I think you could do up to 5 years. And I think if you were trying to extend that beyond the notice period or beyond what's provided in the ordinance, I think you would have an issue. But I think you can grant a franchise of up to 5 years.
So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is offer a couple of comments here, and then certainly entertain any questions that you might have. And I know Jonathan has worked very hard and very diligently on this, as well as Tracy in Finance. What we have done, or what I've done, again, since the production of the item, we've had some discussions with staff, or I have, relative to your CIP plan document and multiple projects. I think we've got close to 200 projects now that are getting ready to be kicked off on your CIP work, and it's a pretty aggressive undertaking and significant one for the city. One of those projects, as the council may recall, had to do with fire services, and fire services in particular. It came up, I think, in the initial discussions with the renovation or potential relocation of Station 1 downtown and the work that might need to be done in that area. And part of what I had suggested to council during your budget process and your CIP process was that we really needed to take a step back, in my opinion, and take a comprehensive look at your fire and EMS services citywide, look at mission, core services, but a very comprehensive review of those items. And council included that in your CIP document this year that you adopted August 31st, and there's funding available for that study or that review and that analysis. I'm really looking forward to that. I think that a comprehensive review of our fire and our EMS services really plays into multiple areas and in multiple ways what we do, not just with the location of a station, but with service delivery and services that are requested, or service levels and service levels. As I sat down with staff this week, or actually last week, and we started talking about the scope of work, it became clear to me, for that study and that analysis, it became clear to me that it might not be in the best interest of the city to award any long-term contracts or franchises with regard to fire or EMS services. Both of your contracts, as has already been mentioned, or franchises, I'm sorry, the single franchise that is now in existence expires next year in 07, and the date I think was listed in there, September of 07. I don't have a date for you tonight. We're hopefully the RFP for the fire and services comprehensive analysis will go out fairly shortly. But I do believe we could have something back, at least as it relates to EMS services, certainly by the spring of 07 is what I would be targeting, so that we could at least have that deliverable back as that study, or that component of the study. While the applicant has certainly met all the criteria set forth in the ordinance, and the chief and I have reviewed that and have deemed it administratively complete and certainly ready for your consideration, I do think that if the council is of a mind to approve or grant the application, that a period of less than 5 years would be in order, or at least would be my recommendation to the body. My suggestion would be for a 1-year period. That would, I think, leave as many options open for our city as possible, but at the same time recognize the application is complete, and the services and the need for those services that have been also demonstrated in the application. It's my understanding, I have not spoken directly with the applicants, but it's my understanding that the city attorney has had some discussions, and they were not in opposition to that recommendation or that suggestion. With that, Mayor, that's the only comments I have. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
David, Mr. Blackman.
If both companies who have the service in Temple with both companies expiring on the same day, is that going to be a problem? How, I mean, now you, at the 30th day of October 2007, there is no agreement. And what is the...
I think it's very, in more ways than one, it's very timely that we do our due diligence prior to that time. And that's exactly what our comprehensive review needs to take into consideration. I've focused on the EMS portion of that, but there are multiple levels of this analysis. It's a very detailed and comprehensive work product that we get back. I would like to get that back again, at least the portion that deals with the franchises, in the spring, hopefully in sufficient time for us to negotiate what we need to do much prior to that September 30th. But I actually think the September 30th date and aligning these franchises, again, provides us with the most flexibility depending upon what kind of policy decisions this board, this council might choose to make after you've got all the information and all the data that you could possibly have, hopefully, and some staff recommendations to go along with that. I think it represents an opportunity for us, not necessarily a challenge.
And David, I think with the existing franchise, it expires next year, September 30th. Up until this spring, we had 2 franchisees, and we had Kingstarter, and it would have expired September 30th. So that situation has gone on for quite a while. And as you say, we know how long this process takes. It takes 3 readings and 6 or 7 weeks. Certainly, we could have a system in place as we're evaluating the study and making recommendations. We could be talking to both of the companies. We would have an indication whether of their at least willingness to renew, and we could begin that process in a timely way to, that you can make an informed decision either way. Mayor, this does require a public hearing today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Councilor, are there any other questions you'd like to ask prior to going into the public hearing? At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward to state your name and address for the record prior to making your comment. Oh, Mr. Phillips.
My name is David Phillips. I'm the president of Central Texas Regional EMS. I guess I'd like to start first by thanking Mayor and Council, as well as City Administration and City Leadership, for y'all's approach to this franchise process. Honestly, it's been very, very positive, very helpful. My experience from other communities tells me with certainty that's not necessarily true. At every turn, especially the City Attorney's Office and the City Manager's Office has answered our questions, been very, very honest with us, very straightforward, and I would really like to commend them as well as y'all for the process so far. Relative to our application that's before you this evening, as both City Attorney and City Manager mentioned, I believe we have met certainly the letter of the rule. I believe 2 points in particular that are very, very cogent here and very important that we want to emphasize. First is that I believe we've established a very, very clear and very pressing need for additional non-emergency ambulance service here in this community. And secondly, that we've also, I believe, proven our ability to provide that service and meet that need, both individually as professionals in this business and organizationally as a company. And then I guess our last comment goes to the issue that Mr. Blackburn brought up, which is how to handle the approaching possibility of change in general, how ambulance services handled here in the city. First of all, Mr. Blackburn spoke correctly about our support for a shorter franchise term. Again, to their credit, city staff checked with us to see if that was going to be a major issue from our viewpoint. We really appreciate that, and our answer was no. We agree that I think as all of us have studied this issue, it's become very, very apparent that we need to do something different, both about the provision of ambulance service as well as the regulations of that service. And that is just complicated enough that it is going to require some time and study, and it most likely will and should result in a change in the way you do it. We want to say without a doubt that we absolutely support that. We will do everything we can to help with both the study and with whatever changes y'all decide to implement from that. We think it's appropriate, and we pledge to assist you in that process. We do ask that you recognize the pressing need to provide those services now, but we would be perfectly comfortable with a shorter term, including simply a year. I agree with Mr. Graham's assessment of, although Mr. Shiner's concern was a good one, and we actually all noticed that actually that's a very good point, is what happens if both expire on the same day? Have we made a bad decision? I actually would agree with Mr. Graham that I don't think that's a problem at all. I think we'll have plenty of time to make whatever adjustments we need to make. We would be perfectly comfortable with a 1 year that expired at the end of next September. So again, I want to thank you all very much for your help in this process. We found it to be evidence of what a well-functioning city this really is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Council, any questions that you have for Mr. Phillips at this time?
Thank you.
There being none, thank you, sir. Appreciate your presentation. Does anyone else wish to speak before the council? Dr. Greenberg.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Bobby Greenberg, I'm your medical director. I'm not sure if my comments are as important as I thought they were before I got here, because everyone has mentioned that this is a very complex issue. Even though we're only talking about non-emergency service at this time, the emergency and the non-emergency service are very closely linked. It is a complex business. What's that?
Say that one more time.
That the emergency and non-emergency services are very closely linked, both financially and operationally. There are lots of ways to do it, but as it is now, they're closely linked. I agree with Mr. Blackburn. This needs to be studied. It needs to be studied extensively. We need to make sure that we don't go from having 2 ambulance services to no ambulance services. That would be a disaster. That has happened in communities. We certainly don't want to see that. And as I see the junior fire cadets up here earlier, we owe it to them to make sure that we make the right decisions. So as the medical director for the city, I just feel obligated to say that. I'll offer my services in the study and look forward to your decision.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Greenberg.
Question?
Yeah. Sure, absolutely, please.
Dr. Greenberg, financially the model is the 2 feet off of each other, correct? I mean, you don't make the money on the emergency, you make the money you make back on the non-emergency, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, my question is, if we grant another franchise, we bring in another, what does that do to your financial model in terms of you have one side of the business that's very, very vital, which is the emergency side, which is the side that we can't afford to lose. And then you have the other side of the business which helps supplement that. I mean, how does this impact your model? Have you factored that in? Have y'all done any?
Yeah, you're asking me to now speak for Scott and White, which I can do to a certain extent. I did come here as the medical director for the city. So I'll kind of speak more in general terms. And I would also argue that even though it's called non-emergency transport, it is a necessary service of the city. You know the number of nursing facilities we have in town, the number of people who have limited mobility, and even though it's not an emergency that they be moved around, it's a necessary service. I know that the ordinance states it's for the convenience of the citizens. I think a necessity of the citizens should probably go in future language because this is a necessary service. To answer your question about the modeling or the finances, it takes a lot of drill down to get into that. And what was your exact question again?
Well, my concern is, I guess going back to what you said, where you have cities who have come up all of a sudden with no ambulance service. I mean, we over the years probably have all read situations. I just want to make sure, I mean, I am as free enterprise as in the whole franchise thing on this whole deal bugs me, to be honest, but if we have a situation where it's a win-win symbiotic relationship where you have, Scott and White provides the ambulance service. If we grant another franchise, do all of a sudden have we, in a roundabout way, come full circle and made it not worth? Or I mean, did we hinder the ability of Scott and White to provide the service? And so I know there's a study going to be going on, but that's my concern. I don't want to do something that puts all of a sudden our partner for many years in this thing at a financial disadvantage where decisions have to be made for business reasons. And so my question is, I guess that's background, is to say, if this is done, is this going to have a detrimental impact on the operations of the EMS services? Because I don't want in any way want to see the city get into, I don't want to see us forced into ambulance service. That's the thing that I would never want to see happen. So that's what I'm trying to find out about.
I mean, there is definitely, as you said, the emergency service does not pay the bills. The non-emergency service does. It's hard to predict because it would depend on how, when you start having competition between services, you'd have to see what would happen. But would that affect profit of your current provider? Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a given. To what extent, I cannot tell you.
I spoke with a very high-level official at Scott and White today who actually placed the call to me more in concern for the study as the study is done that we do next spring, that it be done very thoroughly with great caution and to be totally inclusive of all the components necessary on this. But he also added that on behalf of the hospital, they have no objections to this service being provided by another provider in the community. So they are committed to ambulance service, pre-hospital services, I believe is what Scott and White calls it. This individual made the comment to me that they have no objections, but they are very committed to having the pre-hospital services component as a component at the present time, but it also added that it needs to make economic sense for them as they evaluate all the services that they provide, and this community certainly knows that Scott and White is evaluating that every single day.
So, I mean, that's the thing, I guess. I mean, if we do the study, and I guess they'll be also doing their own study of the impact that that's going to have, but my concern is, are we doing something that all of a sudden makes it, doesn't make economic sense anymore for the provider that we have? So, I mean, that's...
Yeah, he said that they're not here. He told me that they're not coming here tonight to express any objections to the additional franchisee. And so all we can do is extract from that, plus the letters that we've received from other providers that we've all received in our packets, or not providers, but from users that say that they support the need for a second provider in our community to provide services.
I've always been taught it's better to have a bird in your hand than one in the bush. And I want to know, I feel as though that keeping the ambulance service with Scott and White at this time, not doing a franchise, and doing a mission study, the scope of the study, is more important. Because I don't want to come up here next September and have, for some reason, no ambulance service for the citizens that have put me in this seat. And that could be a possibility. You never know. And so I feel as though that I need to make sure that I keep what I know with the accuracy, the accountability that's in place right now. So I'm proposing, from what I've studied and what I've learned and what I have gone out and asked, that we not give a franchise and stay with the service that we have now. And that's how I feel.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Dr. Greenberg? Dr. Greenberg, any other comments?
Again, as you look at this and we do our study, remember this is a system, and it includes everything from our police officers that have AEDs for the public and our public access defibrillation program, the emergency, the non-emergency ambulance service, and our firefighter first responders. We have to look at all of that. And how much we have lay people do CPR, that's another thing that's coming up. This is a system, and we have to look at it on a systematic manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg. Just as a reminder, as Dr. Greenberg mentions all those components, that this application is for strictly non-emergency transport and not relating to emergency or 911 directed transport in any way. So, does anyone else wish to speak before the council? Yes, ma'am, if you'll come forward and state your name and address, I appreciate it. Thank you. How do you do?
Thank you.
Hi.
My name is Kim Carden, 370 Woodland Point in Benton. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for Garden Estates. We're an assisted living and retirement community. Our parent company is SunWest Management. We have close to 300 properties across the United States. I've met this gentleman, and I'm formerly from Tyler, Texas. I was there and worked for our company for 6 years at Garden Estates there as well. We have a non-emergency ambulance service in Tyler. We compete with, of course, they not compete. They work in compliance with ETMC and Trinity Mother Francis. With our residents, I'm on behalf of them because one of the biggest complaints that we get from our residents, family members and the residents, is that every time, and let me back up, Garden Estates is a type A assisted living and retirement community. We are not skilled nursing. We do not have nurses, and we do not have physicians in our building. So we have pretty ambulatory residents. One of the things that does happen, as you know, in aging, our residents tend to lose stability and fall quite a bit. Things happen to them that are non-emergency. Because we are not staffed with the nursing staff 24/7 or physicians, our staff is not capable of making a medical decision. We have to call 911 when they fall. They've fallen, we know that they're okay, but because of our regulations, because of state regulations and the regulations of our company, we cannot move our resident. They have to be seen by an emergency personnel, which is 911. It goes back to where we get a lot of complaints from the families. Why do you always call the emergency squad when you know dad's going to fall? He trips, he loses, he gets up too fast, he falls. It costs them quite a bit of money. And of course, you know, a lot of it is billed to Medicare. I don't know all the factoring of what portion is paid and et cetera. I'm just speaking on behalf of my residents and the family members. But it was a great benefit that we had in Tyler. The families appreciated it. We as staff appreciated the fact that we weren't running these poor people into the hospital through an ambulance to sit in an ER for 6 to 7 hours, through which they're already very fragile. You know, to put them through to go to an emergency room and sit for 6 or 7 hours while they're being assessed on when they fell. Make sure they've been ran through the gamut of tests, because the staffing hospital is following the protocol. We get these residents back and they've been traumatized a lot of times, and it was all because they got up too fast, their blood pressure fell, and there was nothing really seriously wrong with them. So my plea to you is that you would consider things like that. I know that, I don't know how many people are here, but I know that have the assisted living and rehab hospitals, things like those things happen. And to put someone, a geriatric patient, through the trauma of having to take them to the emergency room and be assessed, whether it be an hour or 6 hours, or, you know, just the movement and the change and the commotion causes quite a bit of trauma to them. I really think that if we had something like that in place here in Temple, that it really does help keep our residents in a more safer position, keeps them less traumatized, and it also saves them money. And bottom line, I know that, you know, I hate to follow his footsteps about finances, but, you know, sometimes money isn't the only issue here at hand. And I think that, you know, I know for us and for our property, it's the care of our residents and their safety, the not exposing them to a lot of trauma and change. I think that's most important. And as again, like I said, it's not always about money. And I just really wish you guys would really consider the fact of having a non-emergency medical person in our area that we can have that can come in and are qualified to assess the situation for us. then if they need to go to the emergency room, they will go. But to have EMTs, and we have a great EMT staff. I appreciate the guys. I mean, we have got great EMTs here, and so I'm not discrediting our emergency staff in here. But I think it would free up our other, for the real emergencies, for them to be able to be handled by the EMTs.
So Ms. Cardin, are you suggesting that in those cases, if you, in your judgment, felt that it was not a true emergency, a 911 type of emergency, that you would call a non-emergency ambulance service to transport and come check them out?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, because we're not capable. I mean, we know.
Do you not use that service from Scott and White today? Because they
well,
also
we call
provide
non-emergency. We do call non-emergency.
Okay.
We do.
And do they respond, or I mean,
They do.
Okay.
They have been. Okay. They have been good.
Okay.
No, and that's why I'm saying I have no complaints. I just think that it would. The complaint has come from the families. I guess because of cost, and that goes back to cost factors on the family's part. But a lot of times, the residents not being able to be real cognitive when they're going, okay, so do you want us to take you or not? And they say yes, and it's just there's a whole other issue.
Okay, I just
there.
wanted to make sure I understood
Yes.
your comment
No.
and the point of your comment.
No.
So, okay.
Mayor's kind of brought up a question I had when you talk about dollars. This franchise is got a dollar assessment to each call, non-emergency and emergency, so that does not change, correct, for whoever provides the service? Or is it going to be a competitive market? We can charge what we want to. You call and said, he or she may be hurt, may not be hurt. They come, so now you don't need to go. So that's really not a call. It's $100 instead of $600. I mean, is that?
Well, the franchise is non-emergency only, that part of it. This is what we're dealing with today. Right. You set those rates. You last set those in the year 2000. We have a resolution we have brought to you before, and we will bring back to you, in which you will have a chance to look at those rates for none.
So those rates apply to this potential new franchise as well as our existing franchise that has it now, Scott?
For the non, yeah. Actually, the resolution deals with both emergency and non-emergency, but this franchise today is only for non-emergency. But you'll have a chance to look at those rates when we bring that resolution.
Those are minimum rates, correct?
No, those are actually maximum rates.
Well, the way you set them in 2000 is for non-emergency ambulance transfer service, the BLS. That you allowed a range, they could discount that up to 50%. When we bring that back to you, you'll have the same opportunity to look at those and determine whether you want to set the rate or a range of rates at that time.
But without competition, there's no incentive
Exactly.
for a single provider to offer discounts.
Exactly.
And so to have competition in the marketplace, that's what's good for the patients, the clients,
And
the marketplace in general, and our citizens.
That's what I want to make
We
sure.
average in our property, and I was just asking Barbara Buck, she's our administrator, she's here with me as well. We're here to support the Central Texas communities. That we average 5 days a week that we have non-medical emergencies in our building. That's just us. And we have Hearthstone and we have Wildflower. Those are two other assisted living, and I have a close relationship with the girls there. And I mean, that's real common in what we have, and also in the nursing homes. And that's just an average. And maybe it's just a couple times during the day, for non-emergencies, and they just walk out the door and they get called again, and it's that type of thing. And I think that if we could free up the real emergencies for the emergency squads, for the things that are really needed, not that they're not needed.
Can I have a question? Okay, you were talking about somebody falls, they just lost a blood rush to their head, they fall, it's a non-emergency, you call the non-emergency folks, and then they all of a sudden decide, well, we probably ought to take this person to the emergency room. What happens? Do they then, is that considered then, does it change into an emergency call? Or, I mean, so you call these non-emergency folks, they're evaluating, you said, because they can do the evaluation. What happens if they take them to the hospital, they're going to go to the emergency room no matter what, correct?
Correct.
Does that become an emergency call? I mean, how does that handle the franchise?
Dr. Greenberg may need to answer that question for us.
I
It didn't start out that way. Well, right, and I mean,
Well,
in
what would
any
you do?
situation, I'm sure that when the EMTs arrive, even when we say it's a non-emergency or emergency, they treat it as an emergency. You know, I'm not sure, I'm not educated to answer that question really, but.
So in not all cases,
Not-
do they transport? Okay, so you're saying they might treat and not even transport.
Might they don't actually, they won't do any treatment there. They would just make the determination whether they're to go on to the emergency room or not.
Make a
See, I'm
patient
getting-
care assessment.
It seems to me
I
like.
think you're getting confused. I think that all those we just described are potential emergency cases. I think that the non-emergency is pre-set up transportation to go to the hospital for a patient that needs to have an ambulance deliver him from point A to point B. And what I think is the service what you're talking about is those pre-set up trips. I'm going to schedule you for this day to pick the A, B, and C. Not say a patient fell, can you come look, and it's an emergency or non-emergency, because that's still, in my book, considered an emergency, because you don't know if it's an emergency or not.
That probably would be for the nursing home setting, because we're not a nursing home, we're assisted living, and, but I'm just speaking on my behalf.
Sure.
Probably the nursing home situation, they would use them quite a bit for that.
But
My
would you
question-
guys respond to something like that? Is that going to be your protocol to respond to a potential non-set-up call?
Please, if you come forward and answer the question, I appreciate that.
'Cause I think we're going to get really confused here.
Well,
This is
that's,
an emergency. Now you have
I
double
guess
calls.
my one comment is that I think we are starting to get a little confused and a little off there. Is the I guess the simple answer to Mr. Schneider's question is that she's correct. There are some cases where the managed care facilities and that kind of stuff may have contacted the patient's physician, for example, or the patient's family member, and said, look, she's complaining of some knee pain. She's had an old injury illness to this knee. It's starting to swell up. We called her doctor. He'd like to see her, that kind of stuff. That is, and we have alternative transport options for that, and we did at Scott and White as well. Those are the kinds of things that we offer for assisted living facilities, independent of a fall. The short version, the simple version, as best we can kind of cull through all that, is I think your assessment's right. I think a fall, she bumped her head, she didn't look bad, still needs to go through the traditional, it's not necessarily a 911 call. What these guys actually do now is they do call the Scott and White system, and Scott and White has that Dr. Greenberg oversees this, a fairly sophisticated medical protocol for querying the caretaker there at the assisted living, determining whether or not it requires an emergency response or not. If it doesn't, they send them non-emergency. All that already exists and actually works great.
Sure.
I think, how this dovetails in that to try to answer your question is that there are really some cases where truly the patient's not even going to the ER. They're literally going to a doctor's office for assessment, and that's one of our niches, is that transport. Does that help?
Pre-set up visit or
No,
a
they're not necessarily
unannounced
pre-set up.
visit?
That's right. They're frequently unscheduled because it's, in fact, that's one of the challenges for the facilities is that in the absence of having something available to move that patient on an unscheduled basis, it gets very, very difficult. If we can get the guy into the clinic now, can you see him now? Yeah, I can see him now. Then one of the options they'd like to have is to be able to find a ride for that guy now, and that's a challenge for them now.
I totally understand that. What Ms. Carden said, though, is, that's what got me thinking, if they have a fall, but it's not bad, they're lightheaded, then we want to be able to call somebody to decide if this is an emergency or not. That doesn't jive with, because if all of a sudden you're called and you determine this person goes to the emergency room, that becomes an emergency call. That's why.
Are you going to respond to that, I guess is the basic question.
It actually depends. Our dispatchers also have that same training to ask a few questions.
Right.
The ordinance actually, I think the simplest answer for everybody, I'm surprised Jonathan didn't already jump on this, is the ordinance actually is crystal clear on that, to me. It really is. It says very explicitly what is an emergency in the ordinance, and it precludes us from responding to a case that meets that criteria, and it expressly says if we get a call that matches that criteria, we're required by our ordinance to roll it to the 911 provider.
Okay, well, let me just
So
say.
So you would then do that?
Yes, we would then call the 911
And I guess
provider.
when I use that term have some residents who do tend to fall a lot. It's not,
Sure.
it's not, so please, I hope I didn't add confusion in saying that, and the family's going, Dad's gonna fall 15 times today, and 15 times you're gonna call EMS.
Mrs. Carden, first of all, he's gonna fall 15 times. He should not be
True.
in assisted
No, I'm
living
just
nursing home.
I'm exaggerating.
Okay, second thing is, you made the comment that your regulations determine that if he falls, that's determined an emergency call.
Right.
That answers my question right there. That's an emergency call.
So you would then be compelled to call, even if it's direct to Scott and White, and report that as opposed to calling 911. And you would just report that, because otherwise, if you call Central Texas EMS Services, you describe the situation, their organization's going to determine that's an emergency call. We'll call Scott and White for you and have them respond. Or call 911, whatever your process is.
And a lot of it,
So-
in the meantime, when the patient's on the floor and you're trying to determine who you call or when you call instead of just immediately
No,
calling
that doesn't
911.
ever happen.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm coming from a medical standpoint.
I see what you're saying, but no, that doesn't happen. We're not doing do-we calls. It's case by case point.
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, you're-
Understand.
you
You deal with it every day.
You answered your question by saying if he falls, your regulations are an emergency call.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for participating. Dr. Greenberg, did you have a comment you wanted to make in regards to that at all? Did it settle out okay? Thank you, sir.
When we sign up if we sign up a new franchise, and it's gonna be for a non-emergency situation, we have an EMS police, if he gets like a emergency call and it has to go to the deal and there's no time to whatever, I mean.
We have a police who's going to administer it. I mean, when we've had one provider and it is the EMS, I mean, it's the non-emergency and the emergency, the process is pretty similar. You're calling the same people, and I think is what he's saying, is they're going to go through the process of the protocols and determining does it meet that definition as an emergency, and they're going to treat it as such. I think we haven't had this situation in a while where we've had a little while for two providers, but I think they'll go through that process. If they determine it meets that definition of emergency, they're going to refer that call to your contracted emergency provider. It will go to Scott and White.
But before, it's not confusing because both providers had emergency and non-emergency call of capability, right?
They both had basic life support and ALS, but King's Daughter was not an emergency provider. We have a contract with Scott and White to do that.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak before the council on this item?
My name is Sherry G., and I'm not a resident of Temple, but I am an employee in Temple. I work for a nursing home, and we have lots of incidents where we have a non-emergency transport. During the daytime, a wheelchair person, ambulatory person, we can transport. After hours, somebody needs to go to the hospital, somebody's sitting in ER and needs to come home. We have no way to get them home. You know, they may sit waiting for transportation for several hours at Scott and White or King's Daughters, whichever hospital we send them. And because there's there's too many emergencies going on, and maybe there's a big wreck out on the highway, and they took all the ambulances, which is not unreal. And then so our little residents are sitting there waiting to come home. And if we had a non-emergency ambulance service that we could call to bring them home, because they need to come on a stretcher, or they need to come in a wheelchair that we have no body to bring them. A lot of times when they come, if they're able, they come home in a taxi with assistant, with someone with them. But it's not all, it's not always good to do it that way. Sometimes you need, as a bed patient, just send them out to the doctors, send them out. If they run a fever in the evening, the doc calls and said, send them into the ER and get checked. That is not a real emergency that we need to call 911 and get them there in 5 minutes. But if we could call the non-emergency ambulance, they come and get them, take them over there, and it saves it. They get there quicker, and it saves the patients from having to sit and wait. Or when they do emergency transport, they're gonna try to do everything that they need to do. But for a fever, all you need is a transport. You know, you get to the emergency room, you get evaluated, and the way you can come back home. You know, that's just the way, you know, if we had just a non-emergency transport, it would help tremendously. You know, now that there's only Scott and White, you know, if we have a patient in the hospital and they're coming back home to us, they have to come by ambulance. They're gonna discharge them at 2 o'clock, but we may not get them till 5:30. You know, they've waited there, 5 hours for a non-emergency transport to bring them. You know, and I'm not the only nursing home in town. You know, they're all like that. We all have the same problems. And I just would like to, say how much we would appreciate a non-emergency.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Erickson. I'm not a resident of the City of the Temple, but I do work here. I reside in Morgan's Point. Several of the points that have been made have been brought to my attention. I work for the Temple Daily Telegram and have several nursing home accounts and assisted living accounts, and that's been brought to my attention. But also as a resident in this county and this community, and Scott and White provides emergency service for Belton, that area. I'm concerned as not only a mother of children, but as I also have grandparents that live in this area, and it was plainly stated earlier, this area is growing and booming, and I feel that if we don't have a non-emergency transport service for the nursing homes and the assisted living centers, Scott and White is not going to have the manpower to handle the emergency services that they are here for. I live out in Morgan's Point. We have a volunteer fire department out there, and like I said, I have a mother of 6 and 4. And I'm afraid that if one day there is an emergency, how long is it going to take for Scott and White to respond out there when there's so much else going on that they could have been freed up by a non-emergency service? And likewise with my grandparents, if there's something wrong with them, my grandmother's been in and out of the hospital several times in the past couple of months and had to be hauled in by Scott and White due to emergency. What happens if something happens and they're tied up in an emergency? It needs immediate attention, and that's 2 minutes that could have prevented somebody from dying. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm a former employee of the government at the VA out here. I am also a licensed vocational nurse. And as a nurse working at the VA, I had many occasions to where I had to take patients to Scott and White. Because the VA at the time had their own vans. And I load the patient on the van, and I went to Scott and White with them, I stayed with them for their procedures, and then I brought them back in that same van. And this is just, I make sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I didn't get no work done on the floor, just carrying his patients. Some of them were a little loony. I had to take real good close care of them. But I suggest to err on the side of caution to grant a 1-year, 6-month franchise, so we can do all the studies you need and still be covered in September if something happens. That's just my observations and opinions.
Thank you, Mr. Catt.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm B.W. Ponder, Cedar Creek Road, Temple, Texas. I worked for Scott and White for 10 years, ran the fleet shop there for 10 years, took care of all the ambulances for Scott and White, and Scott and White does a great job for EMS service in this town, and everybody appreciates that. When I left a year and a half ago, their fleet is aging. They have a lot of miles on a lot of their trucks, which is okay, but stuff like that gets some age on it, and you tend to have mechanical failures and whatnot. So it kind of depletes some of your resources you have available, especially in times when Scott and White's not focusing on a lot of smaller operations like that. They're doing a lot of building and whatnot. So capital acquisitions have not been replacements for trucks that have 300,000 miles on them. So a lot of times they're short on vehicles to go out on non-emergency transports. They have to concentrate on the EMS, the people that are in accidents or have had a major issue. So I know a lot of people in this town, and these 2 guys that are doing this are are very great guys that do a lot of good for a lot of people, and that's what they've done their whole life. So they're doing this from the heart to help this community, and I just wanted to say that I support them 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Pond.
You bet.
Anyone else? Mr. Phillips?
Just wanted real briefly to answer, I guess, a couple of questions. Mr. Schneider kind of asked about enforcement. In the past 6 years, I guess, that I've been here, we have had some cases where actually it was an ambulance service that didn't have a franchise, had come in and done what essentially equated to an emergency call. So we actually were able to discover a process by which we would be held accountable now that I'm on the other side of the aisle, which is that the folks receiving the patient recognized the fact that that didn't come through the right channels, and we ended up contacting the fire department, and they went out and chatted with the folks, and the ordinance does provide for fines and enforcement. So there is a mechanism to tell if someone's doing it wrong, and we've actually exercised the mechanism to stop someone from doing it. And then I guess two other comments that Mr. Jeter brought up that I think are important for you all to consider strategically is if we make a change to the financial mix, where is that going to put us in the future? I guess I would tell you, just from my experience in business and certainly my experience in this community, two things. I actually would disagree with Dr. Greenberg's assessment on the finances on the 911. One of the nice things about the community you're in is you really won't ever have to worry about that. You can provide 911 service only and pay the bills. And the reason is that we have a very, very, very good, in our business we call it a payer mix. We have a very good mix of folks who have insurance. We have very few people in this community that are completely uninsured. The majority, as you all know, the economy here is very, very healthy. The 911 business here is fine. As we noted in the workshop a while back, Medicare and the other payers follow that, pay for emergency calls quite a bit higher than non-emergency calls. So financially, 911 is not a bad thing in this community. That is not true of other communities. That's true here and in a few other places, Williamson County, that kind of stuff. Because of that, I don't think you all will ever face a day, even when Steve and I decide we don't want to do this anymore and go fishing, you will never face a day where there won't be an ambulance provider here. This community financially is very, very healthy. Lots of healthcare industry to support ambulances. So I don't think you'll ever really have to worry about that. Certainly it should be part of your thinking, and certainly you have to make sure you don't have to worry about that, but I don't see either of those as any kind of real issue at all. It depends on how you slice the finances, but my opinion of the finances was that we actually paid the bills just fine on the one side.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Phillips, in that comment, I just want to say that I appreciate you saying that, but when I make a vote tonight, I have to vote for the citizens that have elected to put me in this seat. And so when I make that vote, you remember, that's who I have to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak before the council this evening? Mr. Fay.
Mayor, council. Councilmember Ty Rock, I thank you for that comment, because that's exactly why we're here tonight. And I believe if you folks, and I understand you've taken time to review your packet, and in our packet you've noticed that we have over 10 letters of support from nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and home health care agencies from within the community that represent, if not hundreds, thousands of patients here that have a need. And so those are the folks that also I think you need to consider. So thank you for mentioning that. Pursuant to the application for non-emergency ambulance franchise by Central Texas Regional EMS and the requirement to prove a need for this service within the community, I believe we've done that overwhelmingly with the letters that we've submitted with our packet. These letters, again, represent many residents and citizens within the community. The issuance of this franchise will benefit the residents who have an interest in this service by offering an alternative whose sole purpose is to ensure a high-quality, safe, and efficient ambulance transportation. This service is administered by knowledgeable and professional individuals with over 40 years of combined experience in the ambulance industry. As Mayor Jones mentioned earlier, in your analysis of the rail system, the population in Texas is growing at a very rapid rate, as it is here in Temple, Texas. The U.S. Census Bureau lists over 2 million citizens over the age of 65 in Texas, and that number is expected to grow by over 500,000 by 2010. When you consider those numbers, you consider that there's a very high percentage of those folks who will need and rely on this kind of a service to transport them to and from their doctor's appointments, etc. Not only do we have a very high number of those folks that are in that age bracket that will need some kind of assisted living, but you also have a very, very high number of Americans with disabilities here in this community. The U.S. Census Bureau also lists over 35,000 citizens in Bell County alone with disabilities. Helping those in need is a passion of mine. I got involved in this industry because I was interested in doing something right for people. I didn't get into it, as I mentioned to my employees, because I thought it was a get-rich-quick scheme, because to become an EMT or a paramedic, surely in the get-rich-quick scheme. But I do it from my heart, as was mentioned earlier. It's an honor and a blessing to be able to serve the nursing homes and assisted living communities. Believe me, by offering these folks and by billing Medicare, we're certainly not in it to get rich. We're involved in this industry because it's a needed service, and again, I believe we've proven that need. I just ask that and appreciate the opportunity to be able to continue to serve the folks in this community who have a need for this service, and I ask that I would be able to extend the passion of myself, my partner, and my employees to the employees who deserve an alternative transport. So I respectfully request that you vote to award a franchise for whatever amount of time that you deem fit to Central Texas Regional EMS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Like
Payne.
to ask me any questions?
Questions for Mr. Payne? No. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, further questions, discussion, or a motion for action on this item?
Motion to approve for a one-year period expiring September 30th, 2007.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to offer a franchise to Central Texas Regional EMS for a period of 1 year expiring on September 30th of 2007. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jesus?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyrell?
No.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Shiner?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Congratulations. Very much. Thanks to those who participated in that discussion. I appreciate you taking the time to come out this evening and offer your comments. Next item on the agenda is the second reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance on second reading, repealing Article 7, smoking of Chapter 16, Health and Sanitation, and enacting a new Article 7, regulation of smoking in public places in Chapter 16, Health and Sanitation in the City Code. Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is the second reading of ordinance on smoking ordinance. We had a first reading 2 weeks ago, received a number of comments and some feedback from the council. We posted this as a second reading and a public hearing, so we would ask that you conduct a public hearing as well today. Thank you, Alan. Go ahead. Since our first reading, we have met with members of the Bell County Medical Society and Ralph Sheffield and Mr. Clinton Harwell, who had some comments at the last public hearing. And from that meeting, we have kind of worked out, I think, a compromise that I think meets the needs of the community. The two changes in the draft that you have now is the exemption for private clubs that was in the ordinance that had read 75% before would now read sale of alcoholic beverages is greater than 45% of gross receipts. Just as kind of background, a typical restaurant, and my source of knowledge here is Mr. Sheffield, his comments, but I think based on his comments, you'll find that a typical restaurant in town selling alcohol sales or having alcohol sales will probably top out at 20 to 25% of their gross receipts based on alcohol. So 45% gross receipts will really address a niche that is probably met by just a few restaurants or private clubs in town, like Mr. Harwell's, that are really where food is of less importance than at most restaurants. And the other exemption, I think there was quite a bit of talk about on the council, was for bowling alleys. And so in this draft, and of course you can do what you choose with that proposed change, but we have proposed an exemption for bowling alleys. In other respects, it remains identical to the ordinance you had on first reading. And Alan, you can go ahead. It's been a long evening. We went through this last time. I've got the whole show here. I would be glad to go through that and explain it, or at least maybe hit a couple of highlights on your call on that.
Council, pleasure.
Bowling alleys and bingo hall.
Bingo parlors, we left the way it was, which was really a limited exemption for them. They're encouraged to have smoking as a separate designated area for that. They could not have smoking if there are minors present.
And minors is defined in the ordinance, or is it a state definition of minors?
That's a state definition.
Okay.
And the Medical Alliance Restaurant Association, everybody's comfortable with this?
Well,
let's say comfortable. Everybody's in agreement.
We're getting ready to have a public hearing, and I won't try to speak.
Well, I mean, are y'all the two TRA and Medical Alliance? I guess you're going to come, but y'all got together. We'll talk through it. Good.
I think one of the things about an ordinance like this, it's difficult. We probably cannot craft an ordinance that everybody is going to be 100% behind, but I think this represents something that I think is a substantial improvement over what we've got in the books, which was really from about 1990, and it brings us more in line with what cities are doing nowadays, and yet, still recognizes some opportunity for exceptions.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Council, any questions or comments? There are none. If you're satisfied with the presentation we received from last time, you feel comfortable with the ordinance as presented. This item we had posted this item as a public hearing for this evening because of the changes that we've made, and we would offer the opportunity again for public comment and dialogue and discussion with the council. So at this time, I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak before the council, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Ms. Barron, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Sylvia Barron, and I work for the Texas Department of State Health Services. My program is Tobacco Prevention and Control. And I'm here tonight to introduce Dr. Phil Wong, that could not be with us tonight, but will be with us with video, or on video. And Dr. Wong has been very instrumental in our program. He used to be our bureau chief, and now he is the medical advisor in the Bureau of Chronic Disease in Austin at the Department of State Health Services. So we brought a video that he will speak to you. Thank you.
Give you my regards.
I will. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Phil Wong. I'm the Medical Director for Chronic Disease Prevention at the Texas Department of State Health Services. Apologize that I can't be there in person, but unfortunately had another out-of-town commitment. I do want to state up front that I'm here as a resource only to provide information and not advocating for any particular position on your ordinance, although certainly my perspective is coming from the public health perspective. With respect to secondhand smoke, I do want to emphasize throughout that first and foremost, this is a public health issue. The recent Surgeon General's report that came out a few months ago really summarized the state of the science well. It's titled The Health Consequences of Involuntary Exposure to Tobacco Smoke. And again, it's a summary of all of the evidence regarding health effects of secondhand smoke. The conclusions are really very clear that secondhand smoke causes premature death and disease in adults and children who are exposed involuntarily to tobacco smoke. Some of the other major conclusions are that there is actually no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke, and also that even short-term exposure can cause health effects. We know, for example, that as little as 30 minutes exposure to secondhand smoke affects the body's ability, the coronary arteries, to supply blood and oxygen to the heart. So people with heart disease can trigger a heart attack or some other event like that. One of the other major conclusions was also that it really takes, eliminating smoking in indoor spaces fully protects non-smokers from exposure to secondhand smoke, but that things like just separating smokers from non-smokers or cleaning the air or ventilation systems do not eliminate the exposure of non-smokers to secondhand smoke. Again, the health aspects are clear, and we've actually done some recent testing in some Texas communities looking at the level of exposure to some of the small particulate that are in the air with secondhand smoke. And we did a study in Austin looking at Austin bars and music venues before and after they passed their 100% smoke-free ordinance. We saw dramatic reductions in their exposure to these disease-causing particulates. And we'd be happy to share with you some of that data if you'd like. Now, again, I said, that this is primarily a public health issue, but we do know when your communities consider this issue, a lot of times the economic concerns arise. So consequently, at the health department, we have also looked at some of the economic data when communities have passed smoke-free ordinances. What we've tried to do is look at the sales tax data for restaurants, bars, mixed beverages, those sorts of things that come from the comptroller's office in communities that have passed ordinances, and look at the data before and afterwards. We've actually had some of our studies published. We had a recent study of El Paso, which was the first Texas city to be 100% smoke-free, including all the bars and restaurants. We looked at restaurant sales, bar sales, mixed beverage sales, and none of them showed any adverse effect after implementation of their ordinance. In fact, all of the well-conducted studies that are based on objective sales tax data and use appropriate statistical methods do not show any adverse economic impact. We've actually done some recent studies also on Austin, looking at their mixed beverage sales, and again saw no adverse economic impact, and we can share that with you. Now, I know that you're going to be bombarded with a lot of studies and so-called economic studies, and I would just ask that as you look at the data, really assess the quality. And some of the key criteria to evaluate them: first, make sure it's based on objective data like sales tax data. Make sure that they look at for a long enough period before and after the implementation of the ordinance, so you can really look at other trends. Make sure that it uses appropriate statistical techniques, and then finally make sure that it adjusts for underlying economic conditions. And so what we do is we look at the fraction of restaurant or bar sales over total retail sales to adjust for that. For instance, we know that with the rising gas prices and things in the community, a lot of people aren't going out, and we have to try to account for some of that in terms of interpretation of the data. So in conclusion, again, this is primarily a public health issue, and we do know that the only way to safely protect the population is to eliminate exposure to secondhand smoke, and these ordinances are frequently very effective at that. And all of the studies that we've looked at that are objectively done do not show any adverse economic impact as a result of these ordinances. Please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. Thank you very much.
Ms. Barron, thank you for bringing that to us this evening. Any other comments you wish to make? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for being here, Ken. Mr. Graham, you had a comment you wanted to make right now.
I do.
There's a little change.
I guess,
that
yeah,
everybody
if I
should
could.
be aware of
Alan,
as we
I've got a sheet. Could you throw that back up, switch back over that? I misspoke earlier. The two changes I talked about are the only changes from the first reading document and the document you have in your packet. There is another change. that I would propose today on second reading, I think is a good point of clarification. Interestingly, the City of Austin, which has a much more stringent ordinance, I believe that was adopted by referendum. I'm not sure about that. I know it is basically a total ban on smoking in public places. There has been a kind of an ongoing dispute there, and there's actually been some litigation, and a decision by a federal court judge there was announced today. And kind of in response to that, I'm suggesting that we clarify this language that was proposed. The top paragraph here is the section in the code that deals with the kind of violation that can occur when a manager or owner, operator, someone in charge of a facility that is subject to the non-smoking provisions would go ahead and allow smoking despite the ordinance. The section right before this one, 1691, is a section dealing with the requirement that they post a sign that says smoking is prohibited here or it's allowed in a designated area. That's a requirement that they have a sign, as did the Austin ordinance. But in the Austin case, the question that really came up was what constitutes an offense from the property owner standpoint beyond not having the sign posted. And in the Austin ordinance, just the mere fact that someone would, a smoker would be in this facility and smoke could also constitute a violation by the property owner. And they said, the judge basically, in his opinion, said, we want you to define what is criminal or culpable conduct there that you're going to fine them for. And there were some suggestions about language in there. And so what I'm suggesting here is that in addition to the requirement that this ordinance has, that all ordinances have about posting a sign in 1691, that this section be amended to read as follows, to say that it is an offense if they either fail to verbally, if someone is ignoring the smoking is not allowed sign or is prohibited sign, that they must verbally notify them that smoking is not prohibited in this facility or at that location, and then discontinue service to that person. And what was happening in Austin in violation of it is they were just ignoring the ordinance. They would have a sign and they would just laugh about it or joke about it, and they would just keep serving them and they would be smoking. So I think this would address that concern. It basically would say to an owner-operator, post the sign. If someone is violating it, point out to them that smoking is not allowed and refuse service to them. And it would be an affirmative defense if they were charged to say, hey, I did what I could. I've got the sign posted. I've notified them. I'm not serving them. I'm not ignoring the statute, but they would not be liable. And the person that would be, are not liable, but criminally charged, but the person doing smoking would. I think this would address the concern raised in the Austin case, and I think it's probably fair to restaurant owners or other businesses that they do their part, but they're not liable if they've done their part and somebody is violating the ordinance. So I do recommend this change on second reading to that ordinance as well. And I do have copies of the ordinance. I know this is pretty complicated. I know in the last week or so I've gotten a number of calls. Glad to get those. For the most part, Mayor, members of the council, I think the public has been pretty understanding and pretty supportive, but do have copies here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions they might have in doing this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Appreciate it. Okay, we're still in the public hearing, so anyone wishing to speak can certainly come forward. Doctor?
Hello. My name is Dr. Gina O'Brien. I'm a physician who specializes in diseases of the lung, and I work at Scott & White, 2401 South 31st. I was here in December, and I want to thank the mayor and council for continuing this discussion, and I think Dr. Wong said it quite well. We know that secondhand smoke is harmful. We know that businesses have not suffered from such ordinances as this, and I would ask for passage of this ordinance in order that a minority of the population not be able to cause harm to those who wish to enjoy dining out in Temple. And I'm glad my children don't like bowling.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Cap? Oh.
6817 on Record Lane. Back in the 1700s, the British government started making some bad things happen to the colonies. The colonies didn't like this and they revolted. Had the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. In the 1900s, Congress saw fit to abolish alcohol. This created a huge crime wave across the entire nation and gave birth to the mafia and other crime syndicates. In the 2000s, you're messing with tobacco. You're opening another can of worms. The people who like their tobacco are going to rebel just like the people who like their alcohol. And most people want their freedom. The Constitution of the United States, the First Amendment, guarantees the right to free assembly. This includes the free assembly of smokers to gather in an establishment and smoke their whatever, wherever they want to, as long as the owner of that establishment permits it. So denying them the right to smoke in an establishment where the owner allows it is a violation of their First Amendment. It is also a violation to the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution that states, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges of citizens of the United States of America. Smoking, no matter how bad it is still a privilege. And passing this ordinance is a violation of both the First and 14th Amendment to the Constitution. I may also state that I'm basically a non-smoker. My one cigar a year doesn't really make me a smoker, I don't guess. Now, I own 2 businesses that will not be affected by this ordinance. However, my plan in the future it may be affected. I have filed a complaint with the ACLU. Here's the confirmation back from the ACLU of receiving my complaint against this ordinance. And they are investigating the possibility of taking action against the City Council if this ordinance is passed. I have also contacted attorneys on personal behalf. I'm taking the City Council, each individual member, and the city itself to task for passing this ordinance. My comment is, it's my business. What gives you the right to tell me what I can do in my own business? The City Council has made non-smoking in the city buildings. That's fine. We entrusted that duty to y'all, and y'all decided to do non-smoking. I approve of that. We put you in office to take care of these problems for us. You vote to go non-smoking, fine. People don't like it, they can vote you out, put somebody else in, they will do it. But I didn't vote you in to tell me what I can do in either one of my businesses. It's a violation of my right to free enterprise. And like I said, you tell me what I can do in my business, let me come to your place and tell me what to do in your business. Mr. Mayor, you have to sell all your businesses. All the dust they create over there, it's a health hazard. All the smoke, the trucks going through there, the machinery going off, it's a violation of health codes. Shut them down. Same thing with anybody else, Close to your business there is 2 schools. Get rid of your 3rd school. Have you seen the dust flying in that area from the trucks going in and out? That's a health hazard. But I'm not going to tell you to shut your business down because you got dust flying through there from all the pollution going through there. Don't tell me what I can do with my business. Unless you want me to tell me what you can do in yours. Now, this is a total violation of my rights to do what I want to with my business. Anything legal, that is. Right now, smoking is legal in the United States. As long as you're at least 21 or 18, however the age is now. But I'm sorry, one person says, I'm offended by the smokers in a restaurant. Well, you have the freedom not to go to that restaurant. Or you have the freedom to leave whenever you want to. The owner of that restaurant has the right and freedom to make it non-smoking if they want to. Or to make it smoking if they want to. Now this guy here in Wong, he is a paid flunky. With poor information. Let me know. The Elks Lodge today has given over $4 billion to charity nationwide. Our bingo sessions, we give out 35% of our money to charity from Temple Lodge. August 1st, we voted to go non-smoking in our lodge. We have now suspended all donations to charity because we don't no longer have the money to give it to them. We're spending that money we're making on bingo to pay our own bills. And this guy here, he's flunky. He's not looking at all aspects of it. Sure, I hope, I voted for going non-smoking in the Elks Lodge. I voted for it. But I was under the impression that sure, we're going to lose half of our members. When we took straw polls before we made this, half of our members were going to leave if we quit smoking. But I expected them to come back. after got through being mad, start playing bingo again. Well, that has not happened. It's been 4 or 5 months, and we're in trouble. We take all our bingo money and still give it to charity, to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, baseball, football, basketball, soccer. We're paying our bills with it. We emptied out $50,000 out of our certificate deposit savings account to pay our bills since August. So, take a strong look at this. And if you pass it, avoid contact the ACLU, and they said they would get back with me when they need some more information. Keep this under mind.
Mr. Capps, if the Temple City Council elects to pass this ordinance tonight, then maybe Capps versus the City of Temple might be the capstone case at the Supreme Court of the United States of America that helps determine this case.
It's a possibility. I sincerely hope this does not happen, but that's eventually what's going to wind up being. It's not the alcohol. Like I said, I smoke 1 cigar a year, New Year's Eve. It cost me $6 for that cigar, but that's why I'm doing once a year. Some people like doing it more than that, and I agree the health benefits are not there, but I'm sorry, this is my business. Let me keep my choice to do what I want to do in my own business as long as it's legal. And the United States of America, it's not illegal for someone of age to smoke a cigarette or cigar or pipe tobacco or chew tobacco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capps. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Sheffield? Oh. What?
I'm sorry. Ralph Sheffield, 3916 South Pea Ridge Road, Temple. Mayor, council, city manager, Blackburn, I do want to commend you folks on this ordinance, and I think it's been a very fair play. As the doctor said earlier, the process started back in December, and there was a lot of concern of businesses and so forth. How it affect everybody? I've been a business owner in Temple since 1975, and I've seen the different ordinances come in, and none of them are good. None of us like government telling us how to run our business. However, to be somewhat fair to the community and fair to what's been trying to be accomplished here, the city manager had asked the two groups to come together and try to sit down and review the situation to see if we can come to heads on an ordinance that was probably better than what we have now. And I think we did that. I think you folks have drawn something up that's very fair, and I commend you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield, for your participation in this process. You've been very helpful as well. Thank you, sir.
Hi. My name is Lauren Lindemann. I live at 606 Brazos, Temple. I'm speaking today on behalf of the future of Temple, which is the teenagers and kids that live in your community. I'm a second-year Texas Teen Ambassador. I cover some 800 miles doing what I'm doing today. I do tobacco prevention. I'm also an athletic trainer at the high school. Well, first of all, I'd like to start talking about the 14th Amendment. If he has his right to smoke, I have my right to breathe clean air. So if he wants to bring that up, then my right is also more powerful than that. Like I said, we are Temple's future, so I don't like bowling because I don't like the smoke. So you want to talk about business, there you go. The business, there are statistics that show, I can prove it to you, that it doesn't lose business, you actually increase. There's been many towns such as Austin, El Paso, Laredo, Georgetown, and Round Rock who's on the verge of it. If big towns like that can do it and they see that they need to protect their people, why can't we? Smoking, yeah, you can have different ventilation systems, that's always an option. You can have different rooms, but you go to places like Jody's or Las Casas, and those rooms there, smoke is like peeing in a pool. You can't get away from it. It's still going to come get you. As long as you can smell it, you're getting the effect. If Temple's supposed to be a safe place to play and stay, how come I'm getting injured whenever I go out to eat or whenever I have a fun night bowling with my friends? Bars and restaurants, again, they don't lose business. They don't lose business. Kids every year are forced into restaurants by their parents. It's not like they can say, Mom, I don't want to go in there because of this. Why not bring the future Temple out and help us be more safe? Yeah, again, it is my right. And the towns that passed it, they had opposers and people that are for it just like we do. And one of them, the opposers were stronger than the forers, but we happen to have more facts and information on it. Like I said, the people that I work with, Texas Teen Ambassadors, do this all around every year. There's 18 of us. We know what we're doing. they have bowling alleys and stuff like that, and they asked me, you know, how's your town doing? What are you doing for your town? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing for my town. I'm going to get this passed. This is going to happen. They asked me why. I said because there's too many people in this town who won't go to Jody's, who won't go to Las Casas or IHOP, places like that we cherish because they're fun to go to, right? So please, just for the future of Temple, pass this ordinance. I very much encourage you.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. Dr. Asbury? We'll get
Dr. Asbury, do you feel like you've just been done up by some pediatric patients?
Good evening. I'm John Asbury, 4201 Dove Lane. I've been a pediatrician here for about 30 years, and I'm not a paid flunky. Again, I'm very thrilled with the new smoke ordinance. I commend you greatly for that, and it's something I can live with. I have only one possible friendly amendment. On 1693, location smokers are not prohibited. First of all, it has, if you have less than 10 employees, you can have smoking. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the small businesses being allowed to smoke. An example would be an ice cream shop. You can have an ice cream shop, a small bakery, a small cafe that's only limited hours, and you could have children there without their parents. And that's a little bit of a concern to me. On item J, you do eliminate smoking in bingo parlors when there are children there. And so I have a recommendation for section 1693L. Minors under the age of 14 of age may not be permitted in a public area of a facility during the hours designated as public smoking area of the City of Temple unless accompanied by a responsible adult for that particular child or children. In other words, I think if the child is going to be someplace where smoking is allowed, the parent should be responsible for taking that child there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asbury.
Okay, boys, each of you have to introduce yourself. Let me help you out a little bit. You can pull the mic down to you. There you go.
Okay, I'm Zachary and I live at 6002 Wildcat Drive. My last name's Eller. Hello, my name's Matthew Murdoch. I live on Olympia Drive, Temple, Texas, and my troop is 153. I'm Alex Dworski, and I live in 3910 Sierra Blanca.
Now, boys, you need to tell us what you want us to know. Speak up to the mic.
We think that smoking should not be allowed in public places. We would like to eat and have fun in a clean environment. This ordinance supports the Scout law. It says a Scout must be clean, and if people smoke, we really can't do that. It's your turn. Also in the Scout law it says be courteous, and when people are smoking and you're breathing their secondhand smoke, that's not being courteous. Also in the Scout oath it says that duty to others comes before duty to self.
Your parents should be very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Lucy Mackin. I live at 1602 Prather in Khalid. I'm the adult advisor for Original Voice, a tobacco prevention program aimed at middle school girls in Bell County. In order to help young girls stay tobacco-free and healthy, the program utilizes a peer-to-peer campaign to spread the truth about tobacco, marketing of tobacco products, and the effects of smoking. As the girls were unable to be here this evening, they asked me to speak on their behalf. The girls in Original Voice feel very strongly about this ordinance, and they are committed to securing the promise of clean, smoke-free indoor air for all Temple residents and visitors. They want to thank you for your time and consideration on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Couchman,
My office is about 4 blocks to the west here, 409 West Adams. I'm a family physician. I worked for Scott & White for over 20 years. The 2-hour wait was worth it just to hear the Boy Scouts. I agree with everything they said, and my practice, I have the pleasure of treating young children, middle-aged folks, and older folks, and they're all impacted by cigarettes. And I'd also like to just reinforce what Dr. Wong had to say tonight. There's very strong evidence that this is a fact. It's not a paid political advertisement. I would strongly support even a stronger position than what we've got before us tonight. I would have approved your first attempt at banning tobacco in this country, but I do support what we have before us tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on that behalf.
Thank you, Dr. Couchman. Appreciate you waiting here this evening. Thank you. Evening, Dr. Spade.
Leo Spates, 6405 Springwood Court. You've heard a lot of information tonight and before about the beneficial effects of a smoking ordinance such as has been proposed. The ordinance is now in a form that is acceptable to the Bell County Medical Society and Medical Alliance of Bell County. So I want to commend it to you and hope that the council will see fit to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spates. We appreciate that testimony. And thank you to all of you for your work on developing this ordinance as well.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Erica Lochner. I represent King's Daughters Hospital as their Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer. The people of this community need your continued support and endeavor that you have before you for the smoking ordinance that you have heard today. I did want to mention, since there have been some comments about topics about the smokers themselves, smoking bans have prompted people to give up the habit. Our facility has been such an example, as I believe last month tried to point out. I believe we owe it to our citizens to encourage smoke cessation, and I believe our community needs the smoking ordinance that you've got before you. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Dr. Greenberg? One more. Always glad to have you here.
Bobby Greenberg, Medical Director and an emergency physician. As when you heard me talk about the system that we have in Temple for emergency and non-emergency care, prevention is a big part of that system. And not having smoking in public areas is part of prevention. Like everyone said, it's clear that smoking causes disease, causes sudden cardiac death. And finally, anything you can do to make me less busy in the emergency department, I look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg. Mr. Harwell.
Clinton Harwell, 3110 Hemlock. Mayor, Councilman, thank you for taking the time and look at how some of the factors of change in the ordinance could affect the businesses in the area, and I appreciate your time and attention to those details. And so I just wanted to thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for your participation and your input.
Randy Rosenberger, 3902 Sumac Drive, Temple. Dr. Vio Spates is a pathologist, so he knows what he speaks. The proposed, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members, the proposed revisions to the city code provide protections to the business owners and operators. In addition to the protections provided by the posting of signs and the cessation of service, please consider including in the revisions to the code a phrase like removal of ashtrays, lighters, and other paraphernalia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Sherry Eller. I live at 6002 Wildcat Drive in Temple. I'm here as a daughter of a mother who was a smoker. She died at the young age of 56. She had lung cancer that went to her brain. And I'm also here as a mother of 2 children. And I just want to say that I agree with the young lady who said that bowling alleys stink. And so we don't like to go bowling. I actually like to bowl. We just don't like to go to the bowling alley because it stinks. And I wish that y'all would make that part of the ordinance stronger because we have a hard time sometimes finding activities. And I think that they're not thinking about the other part of the population who would like to go bowling. But we only have one bowling alley, and it's the Smokehouse. And so I appreciate what y'all are doing. I'm thrilled at what y'all are doing at trying to make this a healthier community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellen. Appreciate that. Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Seeing no one wishing to speak? Oh, Ms. Tice.
I'm Cynthia Dodson, proprietor of Action World Bowl Center. And I appreciate all y'all's talk about what should or should not happen. And I guess I'm supposed to be addressing you. So, we didn't have any incubator for business when my husband and I decided to come to Temple 30 years ago and build a bowling center. We just came over here because we thought the area needed a bowling center. At that time, the majority of our bowlers smoked. And then when the city adopted their last smoking ordinance, we comply with it fully. We moved our cigarette machine behind the counter so that we could address the 18-year-olds issue. We bought all the latest state-of-the-art smoke eaters, and we maintain them faithfully. We do not allow any smoking in the bowling center while our youth league is bowling. And anytime we host a youth tournament, there is no smoking allowed in the bowling center. In a perfect world, there would be no smoking, I think. I would love for it to go away. I lost a husband 31 years ago to smoking. He died with lung cancer. So I'm first-hand at it. So anyway, but I am a realist, and I'm in business to make money. We estimate that 30% of our customers smoke. If they all move to Killeen to bowl, all the tax revenues that we collect and remit to the state are going to go to Killeen, or not all of them, but a big portion of them. We employ about 30 people with about a $500,000 payroll. We pay we help them buy health insurance at Scott & White, which we think greatly of. We have a 401k plan for our employees, which we match dollar for dollar. So we think we're good employers, and we certainly don't want to do anything to make our customers die off early. I don't know how you can keep somebody from doing something that they want to do. Just like the prohibition didn't keep people from drinking. So I wish smoking was outlawed. Again, I'm just here as a business person, and I want to stay in business, and I too think I should be allowed to do what is profitable for me, not what somebody else thinks I ought to do. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Tuck.
I'm Doug Murdoch. I live in Olympia Drive in Temple, Texas. And I wasn't going to talk, but I felt compelled to, both from a health issue, because I am involved in healthcare, but more importantly to the business owners that think that they're going to lose business. They have no idea the business are missing. I've had tons of opportunities to go bowling invited with my family. We decline not to. Other businesses that we don't go to because of that. And they may be losing 30%, probably going to gain another 80%. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murdoch.
Hey, this one's brief. Along with the bowling alley, you might have 30% that are smokers, but if you lose that 30%, which you're not because they're still going to want to bowl, I promise, if you have 30% lose, say you do lose them, think about the 70% that are going to say, hey, now I can go bowl because I'm not going to have to come home and change my clothes. think about it's not we're not trying to take away their rights. All we want to happen is to save our rights. If you want to smoke, so be it. Go outside. Don't stay inside where we have to.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, comments?
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you to know that I do come from a medical background, and if I had my way, and my vote would be no smoking, a smoke-free Temple. Now, how many would agree to that? Okay. Well, that's what I would like to vote for, and that's what I'm going to vote for. I am in full agreement with this ordinance, but I feel as though if Coppers Cove, Texas, El Paso, Texas, Austin, Texas, let's just name them, can not put a Band-Aid effect on a problem, that's how I feel as though we should look at this. So I feel as though that we should vote for, across the board, no smoking. Mr. Sheffield knows I feel that way. I've told him that in December, but I'm not in disagreement with this ordinance. But tonight when I vote, my vote will be smoke-free.
As we considered this ordinance, as it was presented to us, and we considered some exceptions. We made some changes since the first public hearing, and it was done because we're sensitive to the impact of private business. We weren't willing to gamble with their businesses, with what they say was going to happen to their business. There may be good information that says they're not going to lose business, they'll pick up business, and I personally believe that. I believe, Ms. Dykes, that you are losing a lot of business. You're losing the future bowlers because they don't bowl today. I don't bowl, my kids don't bowl, and there's a lot of young people that don't bowl today because of the environment that you go into, even if there's no smoking there. It just stinks, and it's not good for your employees. But that wasn't our purpose. I mean, it was just you made your comments to me, and I brought that forth, and we only have one bowling alley. We're a small community. If we were in El Paso and we could wipe smoking out from basically the surrounding area, that'd be a whole different ballgame. But we're not doing that. We're taking a relatively small town with a lot of opportunities for those citizens to go elsewhere and take their business elsewhere where they might like to smoke. Restaurants, I'm not as concerned because I think we provide a lot of options here in our community, and we probably have as good a selection as almost anywhere around. But the bowling alley was a different story. I mean, there was one bowling alley, and diehard bowlers will go where they can enjoy their recreation the way they want to. And so we made that carve out for that purpose. We did the same thing for Mr. Harwell's business. My preference would be no smoking as well across the board, but also not going to impose our will. It was my personal feeling to not impose the will of my personal feelings across the board to all businesses. So I think this, again, with Mr. Sheffield's work, with the Medical Alliance's work, this is a good ordinance, a good step in the right direction. I think our society is moving to no smoking, and it doesn't have anything to do with we're banning tobacco. It's not a comparison to what happened in Prohibition. There's no comparison at all. We're not doing away with tobacco. We're trying to provide a safe environment for our citizens as best we can. My preferences would be that citizens make their own decisions, and they don't go where they don't want to go with smoking. So hopefully that's the case, that they'll do that. I truly hope there's a lot of restaurants that will just say it's not worth it to put in all this stuff. We're just going to go no smoking. Hope they do that personally, but that, again, is their personal choice as a business. It's individuals' personal choice to go where they feel comfortable or not comfortable. So I think this is a good ordinance for our community, step in the right direction, and I thank, again, all those who participated in this, whether it was the Restaurant Association, Medical Alliance, the Medical Society, or all of you who've participated in these last two public hearings, and those who have sent in their comments. The comments have been overwhelmingly in support of this ordinance or stronger. Some of them just said, I'm in favor of a total ban. So there is no comparison to the amount of comments that we've had against smoking and in support of this ordinance versus those who said, don't impose this on my business, or you're imposing on my rights. So with that said, council, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion on this ordinance. You may make amendments as you will, but to include the amendment that Mr. Graham presented, taking into account the case coming from Austin.
And that's 1692, right?
Amendment to Section 1692. Council?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to pass this ordinance with the inclusion of the change to 1692.
Second.
Motion is second. Council, is there further discussion? There being no discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Henry?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyrell? No. Recommend smoke-free. Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Congratulations, Tim.
Mayor, can I say just two quick words? I want to say thank you to Mr. Graham, the city attorney, for all the work he's put in on this. Lots of hours and lots of drafts, redrafts, discussions with various groups. I also want to thank the business community and the medical community for coming together and working on our works that I do think moves this a little further down the road, and I appreciate that. And I want to point out to Mr. Graham and both those communities in particular. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you, Mr. Graham. I echo that. Appreciate it, sir. Item number 9 is the first reading to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from agriculture district to family district on approximately 1.244 acres of land commonly known as Outblock 2508A, City Edition, located at 906 South Pea Ridge Road. Mr. Mabry, this was presented at our last council meeting, I believe, and we held the public hearing at that time. So if you'll make that presentation again, sir. Or
Yes, this case was originally presented to you on the 21st, and it requires a supermajority for approval. So one of the council members had been absent for the vote, so there was a motion made to table it until today's meeting. So I'll go through and give the presentation.
Mr. Mabry,
Yes.
the person who has this is in the hall in
Yes,
the
ma'am.
scooter, and she needs to be brought in.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you.
We're taking care of that.
Good job. Probably seen some too. Oh, certainly do. So I'll hand this to you when we.
Okay.
I'll give you the opportunity to. Here you go. You can hand it to her. You just turn it on. Actually, not a public hearing today, but since she's the applicant, I'll let her.
Yes. She's made herself available for questioning if anyone has any questions for us.
Thank you,
She's the
Mr.
applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Tyrock.
This is an aerial of the property here. It's in red. It's 1.2 acres on the corner of Pea Ridge Road and Carver Road. Some of the surrounding developments you can see in the aerial. You have Purtle Elementary, which is part of the Belton Independent School District to the north. You have the entry to Hills of Westwood subdivision to the east. Carver Road here runs east-west, and then there's the Westwood Development 1 to the west of the parcel. There's currently a house, a single-family dwelling unit sitting on the subject parcel. It's here in the upper photo on the screen. And the bottom photo is a view looking southeast pretty much at the entrance to the Hills of Westwood subdivision as it's currently constructed. Here's just another view of the actually standing at the property. You have a small well here to the left, and then this is the line of roofs for the Westwood Development 1 in the distance there. This is a look at the future land use map for the area. You have several future land use designations in the vicinity of this parcel here, shaded in with hatch marks on it. You have an agricultural designation to the north. It's part of an SF2 future land use designation And then across Pea Ridge Road, you have an office designation here, and here across Pea Ridge as well, you have a neighborhood and community retail future land use designation. This parcel does not require, if a zone change is granted, does not require an amendment to the comprehensive plan, amendment to the future land use map, because the zoning district that the applicant is seeking is acceptable as part of this moderate density future land use designation that's shaded in yellow here. This shows some of the zoning in the surrounding area. As you can see in the previous slide, the elementary school is in the agricultural zoning district. You have the SF2 single family 2 district in this area to the west, and you have two planned developments with non-residential based zoning to the east. This parcel happens to be zone general retail planned development, and then this parcel is office 2 planned development. The applicant is going for a 2F, two-family dwelling district, which would permit single-family dwellings and duplexes or two-family dwellings, as they're called in the ordinance. One of the purpose statements for this district is that it's to act as a transitional area between single-family neighborhoods and then more intense non-residential neighborhoods. As you can see on the little inset map on the screen, it does fulfill that function if it were granted. It does act to begin a transitional area between single-family here to the west and the non-residential parcels that are here to the east. When this was heard before the Planning and Zoning Commission, notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet of the subject parcel. 5 notices were sent out. 3 were returned for approval. One of the approval notices came from the applicant. With all this in mind, staff has recommended the zone change due to the fact that it would begin to establish a transitional area from the single-family residential area to the west and the non-residential parcels that are to the east. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-3 to recommend denial, and therefore that's why a supermajority would be required from you if the zone change is to be approved. And I'll formally state the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommends denial of the zone change from the A agricultural district to the 2F two-family district. And at this point, I would be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Maiden. Council, do you have questions for Mr. Maiden? If there are none, again, we held the public hearing at the last meeting and held this over due to the having a full council available for the vote. Are there any questions for Ms. Brown? Ms. Brown is the applicant here.
The only comment I had, we had a similar situation just around the block from there, and we denied the duplexes because we didn't feel that it fit in that area. I'm not against duplexes in any way or manner, but it was denied, and that applicant actually came back with another plan to put single-family dwellings on the place, and I'm not at all against duplexes. Don't get me wrong, or trying to make it. I think the deal you had before is you wanted a duplex so you have some income on both sides, that type of deal. But also have to be consistent with what we.
As I recall, that was an issue that related to the fact that it was a long cul-de-sac, and I think there was parking concerns. What was the? Does anybody remember?
It was still. They have parking there in the front.
No,
that was the. I can't remember the guy's name now, but it's just right up the road, and it had a cul-de-sac on the end of the road, but they had off-street parking in front of each duplex. But it was the existing neighborhood to the north and northeast
was single-family dwellings, and then you had a mixture of duplexes in the middle, and the families, the subdivision to the southwest, again, single-family dwellings.
Not that neighborhood I live in. I mean, you got duplexes, you know, half a block from my house. I just, there was something in particular about that development. It just wasn't the fact that it was duplexes.
Reed.
It was Rich Reed.
Roy Reed.
Roy Reed.
It was street, it was like
Street width.
It had to do with the street
That's
width
what I
deal.
was thinking. It was streets and parking, and it had to do with the density that we ended up with because of the fact that there were duplexes there, as opposed to just strictly duplexes in that neighborhood.
Ms. Brown, I spoke to you yesterday. How you puppies? They doing okay? Ms. Brown, you know, I spoke to you yesterday about this would take a supermajority, and I explained to you why. And I also explained about the type of the look and the type of the neighborhood that is in the area. And you explained to me your husband didn't want you to sell that property until your child was out of high school.
That's correct.
And you wanted to put a duplex there and have also the farmhouse behind you. Remember the White House?
That's not really a farm.
Well, it's a White House, let's say.
Yeah, I really want to remove that if I can put the duplex in there. It's not really a crowded duplex I want to build in there. It's sorry to say that.
That's okay.
It's a duplex that's looked like a house. The corridors, they're the one who's building it for me. I don't know if you guys have seen those kind of, you know, it really looks like those kind of, see the subdivision behind me?
Yes, ma'am.
It's really better than those houses. So.
And you wanna have this duplex,
Yes.
ADA, you live in one side and rent the other side.
That's correct.
And what are you gonna do with the White House?
I'm thinking to remove it. I'm thinking to remove that house and get rid of it.
And what about the well, the open well there?
I guess I have to sell it. I don't know, sell it all. Don't know what to do with that. I have to put some cement on top of it.
Yeah, there's a safety concern there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's fenced around well, isn't it, as I saw from the picture? I'm sorry, did I see in the picture that has a fence around that well? Or the pump house, as it's called, pump house and well?
It has been sealed off by some kind of rock or cement.
Is it an open hole well?
No,
It's sealed.
sealed off.
It is.
It has been sealed off.
We understand.
Yeah, I speak to my language. I don't know which one. I speak Japanese and Chinese and I don't know.
Well, you're doing Texan pretty good, ma'am.
How do you, ma'am? That's why I
Hardly tell you from this time. All right. Other questions?
No, I want to go back to the picture of the neighborhood right there. Okay, go back to the one more.
So, do I understand correctly, you're gonna move the house and build where that house is?
Yes, sir.
So that will not exist. You're telling us that it's your intention that just the duplex
So
would.
after I move, I mean,
Are you living in that house now? Do you live in that White House now?
yes, sir. I mean,
So when you build, then you move into the other one, then the other house goes?
that's correct.
Mr. Greenman, would you go through those pictures just slowly for a minute?
Sure. Starting with this one.
Uh-huh.
The house approximately, it looks like it's about right here in the aerial.
The existing house?
The existing house. It takes access onto P Ridge right here.
P Ridge, and wait, go back, and that's where we have a elementary school, correct?
Right up here, yes.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes, sir.
well, just back up, okay, looking at the lower picture, that's the finish out right now for the, what's under construction there in that particular photo.
Yes, the date on this
Yeah.
isn't as recent as
Sure,
this.
understand.
This is
Yeah, but that's the way it finished out, so we're looking basically across the street,
This is almost kind of
looking
standing-
eastbound.
This picture on the bottom is sort of standing right here and looking this way toward the entryway.
Mayor, I'd like to propose maybe a solution in that we would approve this if the applicant is willing as a planned development, that would then make sure, one, not saying that she wouldn't, but in case the property were to change hands, that house does go away once the duplexes are built. And that would also give us a little bit of flexibility on approving the plan in terms of, because she'll have to bring that back and all that. So it would make sense to approve it as a plan development, which gives us a little bit more restriction to make sure that we're getting the good development there. But it still meets her goal of getting the duplexes in there and getting rid of that house.
Okay, it's only one duplex.
Did I say two?
You said duplexes.
I'm sorry, but I
I
meant.
just wanted to clarify.
All right, well, thank you very much, Councilwoman Linda.
Should check your
See,
writing.
I
Check those typos.
need some help on my
Okay,
grammar
just
too.
maybe go through them real slow.
Okay. This is the existing house on the property. This is the driveway going out to P Ridge. This is standing just sort of in this area, almost here in the yard, looking toward the entryway into the Hills of Westwood subdivision. This
Now, on that White House, is there a ramp?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And so this is looking into Hills of Westwood. This portion of the view here and like over here are the parts zoned as PDs on the plan developments on the zoning map that I showed earlier on. This is looking toward the west at the Westwood Development 1 here. And here's the pump that we were talking about earlier, or the well, excuse me. And then would you like more on this portion or just the photos?
You answered my question.
Other questions, council? Clarification? There being none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we would, now Jonathan, do we have to say the stipulations of the plan development in the motion? Or do we just
Well, if you make it, and I'm
meet the same?
about in my planner here, but if you make it a two-family plan development zoning, that would give you the opportunity to review a site plan and show the location of buildings. And if she's showing one building as the build-out, one building a duplex, and not the two, she would have to build in accordance with the site plan that you approve or get an amendment of that site plan. One other thing about plan development that you can do with that you can't do with regular zoning is you can make other physical requirements, whether you want screening or even the appearance, and I don't know if she's made any decisions about what type of construction, masonry, 100%, 75%,
Well, it could be in where it would fit into that area. I mean,
you can if you have all that information today. Yeah.
okay, so
And presume Ms. Brown would need to agree with your proposal, of course.
Correct.
do you know what a plan development is? Basically what we're proposing is a way to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish, but provide the city and the people in the area some protection. For instance, that you wouldn't build the duplex and then leave the house. So the agreement we would make is that you would build the duplex and then that the house would go away and some of those things, which is your plan anyway, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're going to build, if Carruthers is building, it's going to be, I'm sure, some type of brick or something on it.
It's really better than those houses guys have seen. I was going to buy a house over there, but it's not accessible for me.
I understand. So that's another deal. So type of construction, it's going to be some exterior wood, or Brick?
Yes.
Okay. I think, I mean, if you were in agreement to that, I think it's a good solution to at least protect the neighborhood and make sure that those conditions are met. And she needs an accessible house, and it allows her the ability to do that.
Okay.
So that's my motion.
Any
I guess.
issues we have? Okay. Right. Any issues we have relative to need to go back to P&Z on this? We can change this to a plan of development.
I think you're going more restrictive than just multifamily. But again, if there are conditions, make them part of the motion, because otherwise you haven't really provided any kind of guidance about approving the site plan or anything else.
Well, then, I guess conditions one, that the house would go, the standing house would
Be
go.
one
The existing
structure,
house would be a single
one
structure on a
duplex.
piece of property.
One duplex. Mrs. Brown, can I ask you a question? Can you make any representations about, you said it was going to be brick, do you know if have you seen the final design, is it 100% brick?
Yeah, it's 100% brick.
Okay.
I don't know. I have pictures of that building. I don't know where it is.
Okay, well,
Show it to you.
You want to table it?
Is that roadway, we didn't table it much, is that roadway complete? Now, we got plans to finish Pea Ridge Road going south to Hogan. Is that roadway finished in front of there?
You know, the other thing, I'm sorry.
I was thinking right of way and location and all that kind of stuff. We're gonna get the same situation we did on Waco Road. As far as
The
location.
duplex is gonna face on another road, not Pea Ridge, right?
No, it comes with the Tarver.
Right, the duplex will face on Tarver.
Right.
And it'll be right in the middle of that.
Oh, so she would
property,
face the
it's not
middle.
gonna be
I find this
right
stuff.
away. The house might be, but it's gonna be.
Go back to where you can see the school.
Aerial. See, that road is not complete, well, it may be, how far is the Pea Ridge Road complete going to the south? We got in CIP that they're gonna complete Pea Ridge Road from Tarver to Hogan. My suggestion is, as far as location, site map needs to be in compliance with any right-of-way we may need there to, if that's not complete there. I want to get into a situation where the duplex or whatever it is, too close to Tarver or, Pea Ridge Road for right-of-way.
It's gonna be behind the house that's sitting there.
The site plan isn't a plat, so we're not going to be able to do an exaction. We're not going to be able to take additional right-of-way. I mean, you could.
No, I'm not
you can
saying
deal with the
additional
location
right-of-way.
of the
I'm saying
house.
as far as location,
Yeah,
house,
the house, yeah.
don't impede with right-of-way you may have or need.
That could be looked at.
You know, we can do a general on this, get the PD in here. It's got to have a second reading, so at which point, if over the next 2 weeks, we can.
That is correct.
Yeah, between now and the next council meeting, we can hammer out some of these issues with the applicant, and we can bring back something for a final reading.
I will visit with you.
Okay, is that?
And Miss Ash is her realtor, and Miss Ash is not here tonight because of the son's football game.
Okay. So if you want to propose, Tony, that we have a plan development.
One other thing that should be pointed out, though, is that at the P&Z meeting where this was voted as 6-3 for denial, one of the members is the builder that's been mentioned to build the duplex, and he was one of the persons who voted against the zone change, and I think that, I don't know, I think his position on building it is that he was not going to be the one to build it, so that adds a new aspect to this maybe, and maybe it just amounts to getting a different builder. I don't, not sure, but one of the P&Z members basically was the person Jason Carruthers, the builder that's been represented as the possible builder for this duplex. Bringing that out.
the minutes don't reflect any discussion that would have, or lead us to understand why the 3-6 denial. Do you have a sense of what it was?
No.
Okay.
I agree, I don't think that's relevant.
Yeah, it may not be, I'm curious.
Really, the lady owns the land?
I heard
She's got land?
Councilwoman
There you
Bruno
go.
may be getting in the building business, so you may want to conflict out.
Okay. Did you want to propose a plan development?
And so what your thing was to come back again and what, I mean, I didn't.
Well, there's a second reading.
Right.
I mean, so if there's some change that needs to be made as a result of working on some details with the applicant, beyond just saying it's a plan development and what the intent of the plan development is to make sure that within a certain period of time, there's only one building structure on that property. I assume that's what you're moving.
And so, yes, sir, if something came up for some reason, then we would still be able to have the option to vote that down for second reading.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
then it gives a chance for Ms. Brown to work out and understand the details of what we're talking about and present, building.
Okay.
design.
Then there will be a second reading, correct? I just wanted, just what he said. So, okay, I'll make, well, I just got my stereo. I got my lawyer over here, my mayor over here. Yes, I would make that motion that we would do it as a plan development and with that it is going to, the building will move, and that we will have a second hearing and see what it looks like.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second to move this item forward as a plan development, two-family district with the purpose of assuring that the existing structure after the duplex is built will be gone. Is that correct? Okay. Further discussion or question? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember G.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyrell? No. Councilmember Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schroeder?
No, being consistent with the previous landowner adjacent to.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. So that fails at the first reading, so it won't have a second reading.
Mayor?
Because it took supermajority.
Without trying
do
to
that.
lengthen this meeting, we have consistently held in the past that for a first reading, that we would allow it to go forward with a simple majority, but it will not pass the second reading without a supermajority. We've done
Okay.
that before. So
Okay, so we can let it move
Yeah.
forward at that.
let us bring this with
Okay.
the second reading.
Okay. Okay. That's been either practice or.
It is. It has
so-
been.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
First time I've seen that one, so.
Mr. Mayor, do you think we could take a 5-minute break for some of us that have been here since 3:30?
Who's been here since?
I have.
Oh, yeah.
Just 5 minutes?
I don't see any problem with that. Then we'll take a 5-minute recess at this time.
I'm hoping we can stay till 11 tonight. Did we lose Marvin yet? No, not yet. He's still here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll resume the council meeting. At this time, it's 8:35. Item number 10 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from the A Agriculture District to 01 Office 1 District, and consider an amendment to the West Temple Comprehensive Plan to reflect office uses on 12 acres of land commonly known as Outblock 2565A, City Edition, located on the west side of South Kegley Road, south of Wildflower Lane. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an aerial of the parcel that we're talking about. It's 12.79 acres. It fronts on South Kegley Road. It is about 750 feet in each direction, and it adds up to, like I said, just 12.79 acres total. The first slide is a view of Kegley Road with the subject property on the left-hand side. This portion of Kegley is currently about a 45-foot right-of-way with about a 25-foot paved surface. And in the lower picture is just a view of the property, and it's obviously right now in agricultural use. Part of the zone change request involves amending the future land use map for the city. It would be a change from moderate density residential to an office designation on the future land use map, as shown here on this map that you're seeing right now. The surrounding area is all, as you can see, the yellow designated moderate density residential. This map gives you a view of the zoning for the surrounding areas. To the right, across Kegley Road, is the Wildflower subdivision. It's a planned development. It's zoned as a planned development. And on the other side of Kegley Road, where the subject parcel is, everything is that you can see in the map is zoned A, agricultural. This gives you a view of the thoroughfare plan for the City of Temple with an approximation of where the lot is that we're talking about. This will come a little bit more in handy later on when I give the recommendation for the zone change, but it just shows that Kegley is designated green on the map on the thoroughfare plan, which means that it is designated as a arterial on the thoroughfare plan. And then you have an extension of the Sundance Road up to the north that eventually is on the thoroughfare plan thought to be extended this way to join up with Kegley as a collector street. However, this is a zone change request for the Office 1 district, and drawing from the zoning ordinance from the purpose statement, some of the characteristics of the Office 1 district are that it's located convenient to residential areas, that it should be a transitional area allowing low-intensity administrative and professional offices, and that permitted uses should not be major traffic generators. Examples of some of the uses allowed in the O1 district are your general professional offices, such as a real estate office, insurance company, or an insurance office, financial planning, financial advising office. The O1 district also permits medical and dental offices, and it also permits child care facilities, and as most districts in the city do, it permits schools and churches as well. There were 4 notices mailed out to property owners within 200 feet of the subject parcel. None were returned in favor of approval, and none were returned in favor of denial. Moving on to the staff recommendations, staff does recommend an amendment to the future Temple land use map. Although non-residential uses are not on the future land use map anticipated for the area or nearby, it is the designation of Kegley Road as a minor arterial makes this part of the city appropriate for future non-residential development. Staff also recommends approval of the zone change for several reasons that are listed on the screen. One is that the parcel is near a residential subdivision, which is across Kegley Road from it, and that's encouraged in the purpose statement for the district. Another reason is that it would be located near the intersection of that extended collector street that would meet up with Kegley, and that would open it up and make it convenient to several residential developments that could access the office that way. If residential development continues to take place west of the property, then it would function appropriately as a transitional area between the Kegley Road and the residential uses that could be taking place to the west. And also it's located in the agricultural district, which is in the zoning ordinance designated as sort of a holding area for future annexation, or for land that has been relatively recently annexed. So it is up for being changed to suit what the citizens of Temple want. This land was annexed around 1997, and so it's still in that sort of holding agricultural designation. This zoning change case was heard by P&Z, and they voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the zone change. And so the recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of an amendment to the West Temple future land use map from the moderate density residential future land use category to the office future land use category. And the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommends approval of the zone change from the A agricultural district to the O1 office district. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have now.
Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Council, any questions on this?
Could you go back to that land use map as far as, there you go, right, right there.
Fair plan.
Yeah.
So the property coming from Sundance goes right through that property?
As I said, it's an approximation of where the property is. At the time of platting, that would become more of an issue as to the future collector running through the property. But on the thoroughfare plan right now, this Sundance Street is shown to go this way and be near the property.
Yeah, I think that's a poor plan there. I don't think that'll ever take place because of the big channel you have to go through to get a piece of street, and box culverts and all those types of things, flooding and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if that's a consideration for that parcel. Is the other street going east and west from Kegley just south of the parcel, is that the proposed, yeah, there. Is that the Tarver, or is that proposed Hogan going all the way across?
I would have to move over more, which I can't do. This is P Ridge right here. Apparently it's Tarver.
That would be Hogan.
Jupiter right here, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be Hogan. That would be Hogan. Yeah, I just was concerned that I knew that Hogan was supposed to go all the way through to Owego Road to Kegley in the future, and that doesn't. It's not in the middle of that parcel, is what I was getting at. So
right.
We'd have to go around it or something.
Right. No, it's clearly this road is well to the south, or this proposed road is well to the south.
Mr. Mabry, has it been considered if Kegley Road is expanded that there's enough setback on that piece of property, or should we be concerned?
Oh no, it's much. The property is 12 acres. So
okay. Just
have we not purchased the right of way down there
there's right, not all of it. A staff person in the legal department has been working on purchasing various parts of Kegley and getting right of way.
Has that right of way in front of that parcel been purchased?
No.
Because has been, because that's right along 3 Fairway, and across the street there have been talk in the last couple of years of people building some condos or something like that along that but and buying that right away and in the future widening Kegley, but I don't know what plans we have on that. But you know, if the right away was purchased there, it would be a good opportunity to check the right away, so we don't again get the same boat over as we have on Old Waco Road as far as setback of building and that type of deal prior to construction.
And one thing to mention, the thickness of the lines on here aren't an indicator of any kind of width. They're just to make the lines more visible.
Sure.
Okay, other questions, ladies and gentlemen? There being none, this item requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Lloyd Thomas, 18 North 3rd Street. I'm here representing the property owners in this, on the zoning application. Be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Thomas, questions, council? Thank you, sir.
Did anyone in the Wildflower subdivision get notices, or is just the two?
They were sent notices, but none were returned.
There was people in Wildflower that got notices?
I'm not sure exactly who, but
It says
staff may
200
be
feet.
able
I
to
think
answer
you got to
that.
go further than 200 feet.
There's no residences within that gray area, which I
Right.
think represents the 200 feet.
Correct.
So,
And that's,
so
I would imagine that only Wildflower Country Club itself would have received that notice. I don't know for sure, though. The staff may be able to answer that question.
Mr. Mabry, do you have a list of those that received it?
One moment.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Vanderhoy?
Vanderhoy's right across the street. He probably got one in the.
Wildflower Country Club is listed as one of the recipients of notice, which would cover, I imagine, where this portion comes into the gray area, then this whole.
So the country club itself and no residents in it?
Right. Wildflower Country Club Incorporated. That's the name.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before the council on this item? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second to approve item 10 on the first reading. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyrell? Aye. Councilmember Lennon?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 11, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from agriculture district to office 1 district on 9.97 acres out of the land commonly known as Tract 2 of Outblock 6010A, City Edition, located on the north side of West FM 93 and the east side of South 31st Street and west of Springwood Creek Estates, with an amendment to the South Temple Comprehensive Plan to reflect office uses for the entire property. Ms. Lyerly.
Okay, I have that property on the screen. I actually have an aerial so that you have a better view of what we're talking about tonight. This is South 31st Street, and then I have West FM 93. And the inside the dotted yellow line is the property that we're talking about. And just right on the edge of the property is Friars Creek that runs out in this area. We have Deerfield Estates up to the north, and we have Springwood Creek Estates in this area to the east, and also Misty Creek subdivision is on this portion of the property, just east of Friars Creek. And this is our zoning map that we sent out in our notification process. This actually shows the property in question. What you'll see is that the applicant is wanting to use this Office 1 zoning request as a buffer between the general retail district that is at the corner of South 31st Street and West FM 93. And what they want is to buffer the general retail from the residential uses that are along the east side of the property. Springwood Creek Estates is zoned urban estates, and then we recently went through a zone change process for the proposed Misty Creek for planned development, single-family 1 district. And then during our planning and zoning commission meeting, we had questions on the size of the property. So I have this little survey to show the property's dimension. This is actually 200 feet in this area, and then it comes around, wraps around this area. Just so I can explain a little bit about this map and what the Office 1 district means is we actually have 2 different land uses proposed for this particular strip of property. We have a little portion in the corner that is actually recommended for office uses, and then the rest of the property is recommended for moderate density uses. And so if this zone change gets approved for Office 1 district, then we would recommend that the amendment also be approved to show that the entire property would be for Office 1 uses. And we actually have 2 office districts. Just to clarify, the applicant is asking for Office 1. It's more restrictive than the Office 2 district. And the Office 1 district has various setbacks. It would be required to follow a 25-foot front yard setback, a 5-foot interior side yard setback, and then a 15-foot setback from the road. Also, it would have a minimum rear yard setback of 0 feet, but since the residential districts are to the east, that would be subject to the 10-foot setback along Friars Creek. And just to bring up, we had questions about height regulations. We always like to let people know whenever there's a non-residential district next to a residential district or uses, what kind of height requirements we have. And the Office 1 district, which is the one that we're talking about today, it actually has a 3-story limit for height. The Office 2 district actually has any legal height, so that it's very evident that the Office 1 district is more restrictive as far as height requirements. And we did send out 11 notices to properties within 200 feet of this property, and that is shown in the gray. We contacted all the property owners within the gray, and 4 of those properties were within the Springwood Creek Estates subdivision. During the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we had one of our commissioners request that we have like extended courtesy notification to the property owners within, all the property owners within Springwood Creek Estates, since we have recently gone through the different platting and zoning cases in the past. So when we sent out the original notification of the 11 notices, we only received 3 in favor, and those are noted with A's on the map. We did not receive any in opposition. And after our planning and zoning meeting, we did receive some documentation that I have on the screen from the property owners of this particular property, and I believe they have met with some of the concerned citizens that were concerned with maintaining the integrity of Friars Creek, and so they've actually drafted some development standards. Now we have, since this is a request for just a straight Office 1 district, we do not have any way in zoning to make sure that this gets followed other than our plan development requirements. What the property owners told me when they gave this to me was they wanted to wait till after the first reading to see how, what the outcome of this was before they actually wanted to execute this. At the September 18th, 2006 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commissioners voted 5-1 with Commissioner Jelen opposed to recommend approval of this request. They recommended that the zone change from agricultural district to office 1 district be approved, and also they recommended approval of the amendment to the South Temple Comprehensive Plan to reflect office uses for the entire property. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyerly. Council, questions?
Did you say that not only just strip the entire property would be rezoned to this? I misunderstand, or just the area in yellow?
Just the area in yellow.
Okay, just the area in yellow. And the area in the front of that's facility general retail. That's actually deep enough and wide enough to build offices on and all that kind of stuff around the perimeter?
With the creek, I'm not an expert on how much room they would need for that.
Perhaps get the applicant to talk about that. If there are no further questions, this item requires a public hearing, and I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments.
Council members, Lloyd Thomas, 18 North 3rd Street, Temple. Be happy to try to answer any questions that any of you may have. Here representing the property owners who happen to be in the audience today, and any of us can attempt to try to answer questions.
Like your question addressed by the applicants?
I'm just curious.
Mr. Leich, comment that you wanted to make on?
Just if I was answering the questions that our plan is.
If you come forward, please, sir. Thank you.
My name is June Likes. We live at 3245 Farmer Market 184 in Gatesville. My wife and I and Hal Rose and his wife own this property jointly. We plan to, after we understand how the zoning is going to flow from the city council, we will have those restrictions placed to run with the land. We will prepare legal documents and Mr. Graham and Mr. Baird to look at, so that will run with the land.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lowe? Thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience this evening, you and Mr. Rose both. Thank you.
He's ready to retire again, Mr. Rose.
Council, any questions for anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak before the council? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. The only question I would have at this point is if we don't make this a planned development and place these development standards on this, is there any way to enforce that beyond this point as far as zoning?
It's very similar to what John Keela did on the creeks of Deerfield. Those are deed restrictions. They can be enforced by the property owners. We cannot enforce deed restrictions. The only way to do that is if they are actually in a planned development, as you say. But in the absence of that,
there's no assurance that those will be met at this point if it's not as part of the planned development. Correct?
No, we can't enforce them, but they can be enforced by the property owners.
They go through the legal system.
Right.
I'm sorry.
They can go through the legal system.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the document, so I can't comment on what rights it would give anybody else. So, he mentioned that I'm going to review these, and that's probably the first I've heard that. But without seeing those, typically deed restrictions are enforceable by property owners in that subdivision. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, nobody's here doing requesting that they be considered anyway.
Certainly
They're
look at
offered-
that before
they're
the
offered
second
by the
reading.
property owner, so that's fine. It's not, yeah, sure, we're good. No, not an issue. Yeah, we're okay. Mr. Likes, did you want to make another comment? sir?
Mr. Mayor, when we talked with Mr. Baird, he wanted to prepare the instruments, and we told him we would just have the instruments prepared for his approval. And so our attorney will submit those to both Mr. Baird and also to your city attorney. But he had voiced no problem at all in this way of enforcing those restrictions.
Okay, yeah.
And we'll certainly submit them to the board.
It may well grant a right to enforce those deed restrictions to adjoining property owners. I'm just saying. I haven't seen them, so I can't comment on that.
Great, thank you, sir. Okay, council, any other questions? Entertain a motion on item number 11.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the first reading on this item to request the zoning change. No further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item, item 12, is a plat to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a preliminary and final plat of the Gary Addition, a 3-acre, 1-lot residential subdivision located northeast of Highway 190 on the south side of Beagle Road, west of Rabbit Road, with requested exceptions to park fees and fire hydrant requirements of the subdivision ordinance. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason you are reviewing this preliminary final plat is because of the exemptions requested in the summary that you just read. Here is a view of the plat submittal that you have in your materials. It was reviewed by the Design Review Committee September 5th, 2006. The plat was deemed complete September 6th, 2006. Here's an approximation of where the lot is located. It's just one lot, 3 acres. The green circle shows its approximate location. The yellow area shows the boundaries of the city limits of Temple, and then the pink area shows the ETJ that the extraterritorial jurisdiction that extends from the city limit line. As you can see, it is fairly close to the extraterritorial jurisdiction line, and relatively far away from the city limits. These are the exemptions requested by the applicants. One is a park fee in the sum of $225 for the one lot that's created by this plat. Parks and Leisure Services deems this waiver to be appropriate considering the location of the property and its distance from the city limits and the slim likelihood that the area will be annexed anytime soon and be part of or near Temple Park, a park owned by the city of Temple. The fire hydrant requirements exemptions are being requested due to the 2-inch water line and its lack of ability to support fire hydrants. This line is supplied by the East Bell County Water Supply Corporation. With that in mind, staff recommends to approve the preliminary final plat of the Garay Addition with exceptions to the subdivision ordinance regarding park and fire hydrant requirements. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval, and they as well echoed the staff recommendation to approve the preliminary final plat for the Garay Addition with exceptions to the park fees and the fire hydrant requirements. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on this plat.
Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Could you just go back to the map of the city with the ETJ? There you go.
Right here, this is Beagle Road is right here, and then that's the, oops, I'm sorry, that is the road that the lot fronts on.
Just Little River Academy down at the bottom?
this city limit line. Yeah, that would make sense that it would be Little River Castle's the city limit. This is Heidenheimer here, where the little grid is.
Thank you very much.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Approve the application as requested. Can't have, got it on it, okay. Motion is second, further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Tyler.
Aye.
Councilmember Lennon.
Aye.
Councilman Dyer.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Do you guys want to take another break?
No.
Just want to keep going?
I really want to stay till 11.
We better call that non-emergency for Judy over here.
Last item on our agenda, board appointments. We consider adopting a resolution appointing members of the following city boards and commissions. We have one appointment this evening out of 3 opening positions, and it's recommended that we appoint Mr. Raymond Cook to the Temple Public Safety Advisory Board to fill an expired term through September 1st of 2008.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to second to approve Mr. Cook's appointment to Temple Public Safety. If there's no discussion, Madam Secretary.
Aye.
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 Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance and your participation this evening. We're adjourned.